the cup competitions as they get through. Was that good, by the way?
Oh, yeah, well
I've been
done.
working on that.
No, it is a bizarre one, really, because I watched the game last night, but then if you watch the highlights, right, so the highlights package, normally, you know, they do it on Match of the Day, and they try and make it look as even as possible. The highlights is 3 minutes long, and it includes a penalty shootout. Yeah. It was that bad. Like, the game was that bad. United had 31 shots yesterday, managed to score 1 goal, and then a 16-year-old right-back pops up and nearly scuppers them. I mean, it is pretty shocking what's going on there, to be honest with you. Pogba was playing, for goodness sake.
I was about to say, this is the issue, is that you look at the lineup and you've got some top players in the lineup.
If it wasn't for Wan-Bissaka with a fantastic goal line clearance, United would have been in massive, massive trouble. Yeah.
Well, let's see. You look at the likes, so you mentioned Wan-Bissaka, Romero, of course. Fred got a start. Pogba.
Gary. Keith did all right as well in midfield, I thought.
But you know, like we mentioned a few there. And the fact is, they brought on Mata, they brought on James. They wanted to win this quite comfortably. They expected to win it comfortably.
Yeah. Well, they should have won it comfortably. It's Rochdale, for goodness sake. I mean, it's literally... So Rochdale is obviously near Manchester United. Rochdale is the type of place you drive through and lock your doors just in case someone comes out of a Mecca bingo after having a bit too much at kind of midday and decides that they want some of your wallet. You know, you don't draw at home to Rochdale, for goodness sake.
No, I guess any team that plays at a stadium called Spotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an issue there.
Yeah, well, if you've ever hung around outside the Rochdale KFC, you'll see what they mean by Spotland. It was a shocking performance last night. Mason Greenwood, finally obviously put United down after 68 minutes. It took them to break the deadlock. And look, right, okay, I was saying, right, there's a way to spin this.
Go on.
There are eerie parallels with Sir Alex Ferguson's first time.
No, is there? Because, right, we mentioned this briefly off air. Ferguson had a poor time, and he was very close to the sack. But the win they had was against Nottingham Forest, who at the time, I believe they might have been one division below, maybe even the same division, I believe, actually. So Mark Robins got the winner. They won 1-0, and of course, the rest is history. This is against Rochdale.
Yeah, well, I think, look, what I'm taking from this is that he's managed to overcome this. This was his Mark Robins moment. Mason Greenwood is the new Mark Robins, and we are now at Manchester United destined for at least 20 years of total success. I'm looking forward to taking my child or children to Old Trafford at some point just to watch the champions.
Do you know what? We're going to come back to this because I feel there's so much more we need to discuss. Are you feeling worse today if you're a Man United fan or a West Ham fan?
Oh, no. Oh, that's a really tricky one, actually, because West Ham got sunk 4-0 by Oxford United, didn't they? It was a pretty humbling performance. It's a tricky one, that. I think probably West Ham, because you are out, aren't you, I suppose. So that is, by definition, worse than the fact United beat Rochdale 5-3 on penalties. But, yeah, I mean, neither fan... There's no winners there. There is no winners.
Football's definitely the winner.
Yeah.
The only winner. No, do you know what? If you're a West Ham fan, I saw the highlights more. I actually watched the Liverpool game, which was interesting. And by the way, it wasn't easy for them, has to be said.
Can we actually, maybe we're focusing on the wrong thing here. Because Burton won, obviously. Grimsby, okay, he got stuffed. But MK Dons, good showing against Liverpool. Yeah. Oxford beat West Ham, Rochdale. Maybe actually we should just be talking about how good the lower league clubs are.
And we do focus a lot on Championship, League 1, League 2, of course. And it was. And, Oxford got a great manager in Carl Robinson. So, it's nice to see them doing as well as they've done. Certainly the last couple of games, couple of big wins. No, let's do that.
Carl?
Shall we? Met him a few times. Obviously, fantastic tenure at MK Dons and did some great work at Charlton as well. And now he's doing really well at Oxford too. So, I mean, maybe that's what we should be doing today, is actually focusing on the lower leagues, because they've shown that maybe... Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, a lot of these teams made a lot of changes. Brighton, I think their average age was around 21 last night. They went really, really young, which is quite nice to see some of these younger players coming through. But it just shows the gap maybe isn't quite what we've said it is over and over. It's not like the second-string team of all these Premier League clubs are going to wipe the floor with the lower league clubs, because that certainly didn't happen last night.
No, it didn't at all. I just wonder whether or not they are just going to sack Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I know he got the vote of confidence, but that's also known as the kiss of death. And then, I mean, Ed Woodward has to go and sit in the stands and just watch this hot mess unfold in front of him, doesn't he? How long is it before he goes, you know what, I'll have a go? Because Ed Woodward wants to do it all, doesn't he? He's like the kind of Pete Waterman of football, going to write a theme tune, going to sing the theme tune. And so, you look at him and go, well, he doesn't want to get anyone, a specialist in to get the right transfers. He doesn't want to get like a director of football to kind of oversee the way that the club's ethos is. He can't even keep Phil Jones quiet behind him in the stands, as we've seen from that Twitter video. How long is it just before Ed Woodward is in the United dugout?
Do you think that might be the answer?
I think so.
Just give it a go, Ed.
Go on, Ed.
Go on, I think it's time. Is that right? Let's say they do get a technical director in that they've been talking about for the last year. Does that make a difference?
I think with this squad, I think Manchester United have to face up some home truths. They are not a team at the moment. No. It's all very well and good giving the youth a chance. And last night they had 65% possession. They had nearly 300 more passes than Rochdale. They had 31 shots in this game, and they still only managed to draw it in normal time 1-1.
Which, by the way, I mean, even on that, you can look at that different ways. The fact is that they did dominate, of course. They did have more chances. Most nights they win that game 2-3, 4-1, right? So, I mean, you could look at it that way. Their finishing wasn't clinical enough. Is Greenwood a positive?
Mason Greenwood is a real positive. He's clearly a very natural finisher. He got a little bit lucky, perhaps, with the goal last night. But, I mean, you let him off. He kind of just went under the keeper a little bit at the near post. But, yeah, he is a bright talent. But Gary Neville came out and said this the other day, and I thought this was very, very pertinent, really, which was it's all very well and good talking about the class of 92 and what precocious young talents they were. But the fact is that when they broke into the team, they had the likes of Cantona, and Keane was there, and some of these, I think Schmeichel was not long after them. So you look at it and go, well, they had these experienced players around them. They had these world-class players there, and in this United team, they're blooding youth.
No, do you know what? I go back to my point. It's the culture. What you've just said there is spot on. That actually, the moment you get in that, you know that you've had to work so hard to get anywhere near that first-team squad.
It's just given to them now, isn't it?
It's a fair point. I think the culture's not right. You've got so many players there that do have these huge egos. And this is the bit where I disagree with a lot of what Roy Keane says when I listen to him now. He's an interesting character, to say the least. However, one of the things they had, and it would have been that era, was that the moment you're in a dressing room with Cantona, Roy Keane, Mark Hughes, these types of characters, and obviously Mark Hughes was someone I played under at Blackburn, look, they are fierce characters. Yeah. You can't be a shrinking violet and go and play in that team. You need to stand up for yourself, and you need to fit in with the character, fit in with the culture. Otherwise, it's not going to work out, and you will move on, which happened over and over at United back in the day. You think of the amount of players, even Beckham to an extent, the moment you do step out of line, it was known that you are then moving on at that point.
Exactly. So look at this now. So what would Fergie have done in this situation with the likes of a Pogba and a De Gea? If you're stalling over your contracts and if you're being Paul Pogba, you're out the door. I mean, he's already got rid of him once.
The argument is then, has football changed? Because, now, if he had that same approach, he would be moving on players for fun. At some point, you may move on too many players, so to speak. And also, the likes of, we look at the characters that United had back then, the likes of Roy Keane, Mark Hughes, these kind of characters, are they dying out of the game? Is there a reason they're dying out of the game?
Well, I'm not sure football's moved on in a sense, because if you look at someone like a Manchester City or a Liverpool, I think any kind of the Paul Pogba carry-on that they've had there, they would have got rid of him. I think there are more characters there. I think Manchester United has changed, and I think that if one thing's becoming quite obvious is it's all very well and good blooding the youth, and there are some good young talents there, and that is brilliant. It's a magnificent thing that young players are getting a chance at a top football club. But the next couple of buys that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer makes, if he's still in a job, should be, I think, people over the age of 30. And they should have been around the block a little bit, and they should be a bit kind of hard nuts. Even if it is a type of bloke that might not start every week, he's the type of person that you want in your changing room and on your training ground, and isn't afraid to kind of give Mason Greenwood a bit of a kicking in training. Give some of these lads a bit of a kicking.
Got any names in mind?
Nah, to be honest, go on. What are you thinking?
Well, no, this is it. I haven't, and this is, I suppose, part of the issue is then who do you bring in? Because then the issue is, let's say you go and bring in an old school centre half who has got a lot of those qualities, those leadership qualities,
like a Matt Hummels type figure.
Okay.
Potentially. I know he's a bit slow, and I know he's potentially on the wane.
That's then the problem. Is, you could say that, I don't know, did Arsenal try and do that with the Mustafi? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And that's then, it's all good and well that you bring in this character, but if they're not good enough.
Lewandowski, he wants out. See, this is the thing. Lewandowski could be a good fit because apparently he's really frustrated at Bayern Munich at the moment with the fact that they didn't dabble in the transfer market a little bit more than they did. And look, he is a goal scorer. United need a goal scorer. He's been around the block. He's won things. He's the type of person, I mean, he's a big lad as well. Like, if you've got some young centre-backs going up against him in training, you are going to get elbowed in the nose at some point. And I think they look like they need a bit of that, to be honest with you.
I think they need a culture shift, certainly. Last night is another big warning sign. You just wonder how it will turn around for Ole Solskjaer now. It's got to that point where, after the excitement of the start, him getting the job, ever since he's taken that job, it just feels like he's trying a lot of things that aren't necessarily working. The post-match interviews concern me a little bit, where he was asked...
Do the voice.
the cup. He was asked a bit about like what he said to the players afterwards in the dressing room, and he refused to answer. Effectively, none of your business.
But none of the players have been seen since.
No. No, it is concerning. Just touching on West Ham, because a disastrous night for them. They did go down 4-0. And they only had one player under 21, I believe. So it wasn't like they were kids they put out, but they have been knocked out to League One opposition 3 times in the last 3 seasons. Wigan in the FA Cup, Wimbledon in the FA Cup, 18-19, now Oxford. I mean, I guess this then, as a West Ham fan, it's just disappointing more than anything. Like, they've had a reasonably good start, in fairness, in the league. In fact, a very good start in the league. But to see this, you want to see a little bit more. It's the kind of thing, same applies for many teams, where you're not going to win the Premier League, but actually a nice cup run is always nice. Making a semi-final of a League Cup, and you just don't know. Yeah,
I just wonder if it's slightly different for West Ham this year. And Hammers fans, let's hear from you, 0208 70 20 558 or at Love Sport Radio on Twitter. I think it's slightly different because for the first time in a while, I think there's a chance West Ham might make the top 4. Just a chance. And getting knocked out last night, all right, you'd wish it was 1-0 or whatever, right? But it was 4-0. Okay, that's happened now. Does it give them more chance to just focus on that top 4 ambitions? And look, again, West Ham fans, get in touch. Would you rather get to the semi-final or the final of the Carabao Cup or finish top 4? I suspect probably top 4.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, if you get Champions League, of course. I guess it's if it was a case of winning the Carabao Cup or finishing top 6, that's probably more the question.
And I think the only reason I'm saying that is that I do think it's fairly realistic this season that between maybe Leicester, less so Wolves now, I think they've had a couple of slip-ups, between Leicester and West Ham, I could see one of those teams sneaking into that top 4. And I think that maybe it's worth putting all their eggs in that basket this season.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, we're off and running. As always, if you do want to get in touch, 0208 70 20 558 on the WhatsApp, at Love Sport Radio on the socials. We're going to be talking business next.
This is Love Sport.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Hi, I'm Marilyn from Oxfordshire. My current insurance company quoted £245.08 to reinsure. And a spokesman said, obtain me a price of £173.49 for the same cover. This was a fantastic saving for me. And next time my car insurance comes up for renewal, I will be going through a spokesman said. No doubt about that.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
There are many things a mother can pass on to her baby. Her smile, her eye colour, and her immunity to whooping cough. Whooping cough is a very dangerous illness for young babies. And at the moment it's spreading fast. A simple vaccination during your pregnancy can help to protect your baby in their first weeks. Please speak to your GP, nurse, or healthcare professional and pass on your immunity.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
I have my own radio station too. It's called Love Trump Radio, the only station 100% fair and 112% factual.
This is Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast. Time is 13 minutes to 7, and that means it's time for this.
It's business. It's business time. I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say it's time for business. It's business time. Ooh, it's business.
It's business time. Chris Bailey, founder of financialorbit.com. Good morning.
You're welcome.
Good morning. I missed the ooze there. The sort of the kind of the tenor kind of mumble was sort of all right, but I think the ooze with conviction. We had those when you were away, Rich. You know, I mean, Patrick really stepped up to the plate.
Yeah,
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, so what is it now that I'm back? Are you not quite
Well,
as
you're in the hot seat now, so it's
enthusiastic,
very
or-
much up to you. You know
Well,
what I
I
mean?
thought we'd become a bit more refined, you know, maybe taking it down a notch, but just with a little bit more soul.
Yeah, we've remastered it, haven't we?
We have, yeah. I'm aware that we only have Chris Bailey on the phone for a few minutes,
Yes,
so we
let's
could
do it.
talk about the business song, or we could actually talk business. I don't know. Let's talk business. Cool. Boris Busmaker goes into admin.
Oh, bad news, yes, indeed. Remember the Boris bus, the red bus with various assertions about NHS and spending and Brexit and goodness and light and everything else? Well, unfortunately, Right Bus, who are the company behind it, went into administration yesterday. Proud Northern Irish company, and obviously bad news for any of their employees, many of them who unfortunately seem to be on the cusp of losing their jobs. So, yeah, not very good news for them at all, and reflects the fact that it's actually been a very difficult market for buses in terms of building them and selling them in the UK. Perhaps not completely surprising. Obviously, there's a big structural trend. We're moving to other forms of transport, obviously over many generations. But I think the trouble is it's a competitive market as well, and unfortunately their products just haven't been exciting the purchasers out there like the local councils and everybody else.
Bad news, and from bad news to more bad news. Thomas Cook had a £3 billion hole in the balance sheet.
Well, that's right. I mean, maybe the Right Bus company would be the big story in terms of insolvency this week, but obviously trumped by Thomas Cook in recent days. And the news actually gets worse at a certain level. I mean, most people were assuming they only had about 1.8 billion of debt, but the sort of a fuller set of numbers are coming up, and it's over 3 billion now. And you're starting to understand actually why the government refused to give over a couple of £100 million to tie them over, because clearly it would have just been a sticking plaster on a gaping wound. Clearly even more questions for the management of Thomas Cook to answer in terms of quite how they got themselves into this situation. As we've talked about earlier in the week, though, you know, They nearly went bust 6-7 years ago. The city have known that they've been on the kind of emergency patient watch list for a while, but it's clearly deteriorated very sharply over the last 6 to 12 months, and questions need to be answered.
Just out of interest, with that £3 billion gaping hole in their finances, off the back of Thomas Cook going bust, do like the chief execs and all that, do they have their assets taken? Their lovely houses? I don't know. How does this work? Because they can't recoup £3 billion, can they?
It sadly doesn't work that way. I mean, I say sadly in the sense that there's a split between being an owner and a manager, and with these limited liability companies, to get all technical on it, it basically means that they can't sort of drag back your personal assets, even if you've been paid, gazillions in bonuses and whatever, unless there's been criminal activity or there's been something within the sort of the structure of the bonus payments that have been sort of structured from the get-go. So I think it's unlikely there's going to be much of a clawback, and certainly there's not going to be any seizing of houses unless they've been really silly and committed some criminal activity. But I think it's more incompetence than anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, it certainly sounds that way. Transport Secretary lifts section of speech from Chris Grayling.
Well, talking about incompetence, I mean, this is just amazing. This is government by, when you sort of save as a file and, you sort of change the file name and kind of, it's basically the same thing. Well, essentially, remember when Monarch Airlines went bust a couple of years or so ago? The then Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, who obviously had Grayling even, who had all sorts of issues and problems, fluffs and other sort of problems. He gave a speech in the Houses of Parliament. A speech which apparently was pretty much copied word for word, but obviously instead of Monarch Airlines, Thomas Cook and updated stats and different stats and whatever were inserted in. But the basic sort of raw structure of the speech was exactly the same given by the new Transport Secretary yesterday on Thomas Cook. So that raised a few eyebrows. And as I said, government by save as. It's obviously the efficient and legally correct way to do it. But it just... you kind of think they could have at least gone to the trouble of actually writing a new speech.
I mean, you can just imagine, can't you? Boris Johnson at the next kind of election campaign just stands up and just goes, I have a dream. I have a dream. Hang on, haven't I heard this somewhere before?
Listen, I quite like this. This is efficiency at its best. Why waste valuable time on other matters when you can just copy and paste?
That's right. Well, you could do it. It's true. It's true. I think it'd be boring if you guys did it every morning. It would be boring, wouldn't it? You know, your listeners would drop from sort of 10 million plus to just a mere sort of Radio 1 5 million level or something. You know,
we know how it felt to be Nick Grimshaw, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
You know,
that's right.
There you go. You make a great point, Chris. As always, we'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a good one.
Okay, so Chris Bailey, there, founder of FinancialOrbit.com. Look, for me, I think that's excellent. I think efficiency at its best.
I just think in this day and age, how do they know that you're going to get caught out?
Do they?
You know, nothing gets through the net anymore, does it?
What you've got to do is you copy paste, but at least change like 1 in 10 words. Just
Yeah.
get a thesaurus. That's what they call it, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, get one of them, and then like choose certain words and just change the bigger words to ones that.
Yeah, or if it's like a university essay when you've got to hit your word count, you just keep using words like moreover and furthermore.
Furthermore. Yeah, I remember my uni days. What good days they were.
All 8 of them.
All 8 of them. They were wild days. So let's go back to the games last night, shall we?
Yeah, I think we probably should. Manchester United are pathetic. In fact, that's what's on the back of the Sun this morning. Pathetic, and a picture of Paul Pogba.
Do you know what? By the way, is it harsh? In fact, they have focused a bit on West Ham. I was going to say the fact that who had the worst night last night? Was it United? Was it West Ham? Was it Bournemouth?
I think given everything that's going on, it's Manchester United because it's an accumulation of stuff, isn't it? West Ham are actually playing all right this season, and all right, they got stuffed by a lower league side for whom that would be their biggest game of their seasons and some of them their careers potentially. And Manchester United, it is that accumulation, isn't it, of several miserable results. Everyone thought, oh, you're playing Rochdale, probably stuff them, and they just didn't. And it was the fact that they just look so lacking. They're unable to keep a clean sheet at the moment, even against a side like Rochdale. But the fact is, they're not exactly banging them in. It would have been all right if it was 6-1, you know what I mean? But it wasn't. At the end of normal time, it was 1-1.
Yeah.
You know,
it was. We're going to hear from Solskjaer in a minute. Just quickly on the Burton game, 28 minutes of added on time with the floodlight failure, which I always thought was always quite fun when you see the board come up with 28. You know, so we're in injury time, lads. Can we get an injury time winner? Anyway, they won 2-0, of course, against a young Bournemouth team. Let's hear from Solskjaer though, his reaction to the 4th round draw.
It's a great tie, and it'll be a good one for these boys. They'll go there and play against one of the top teams in the tournament, and they'll learn from that as well.
Of course, Solskjaer there talking about the 4th round draw. There's a couple of interesting ties in the 4th. Interesting and not so interesting. So I spoke to one of the lads at Oxford after the game yesterday, and he said that obviously they're a little bit disappointed with the draw because after beating West Ham, they were hoping for maybe another big Premier League team. They've ended up getting Sunderland in their next round. But the point is actually that they've now got a really good chance of progressing to the quarterfinals potentially.
Yeah, they do. They do. I just want to pick Solskjaer up on something he said there, Rich. Sorry, but so United play Chelsea next round. And what he said there is, and the boys are going to go there against a big club, and it'll be great experience for the boys as well. You think, you are in the same league as Chelsea. You're supposed to be competing with Chelsea. Chelsea are on a transfer ban and are playing youth. And you're the manager of Manchester United saying that it's going to be great experience for your lads to go to Stamford Bridge. I mean, I just find that absolutely bonkers. I mean, that's the type of thing you would hear. You would have expected the Rochdale manager to have said if they'd beaten United.
Yeah, just to touch on the 4th round draw, a couple of interesting ones. So Chelsea taking on Man United, of course. Liverpool taking on Arsenal, arguably the 2 standout ties. The 2, though, for me, you've got Crawley taking on Colchester, Oxford taking on Sunderland. What will be quite nice is you will have a couple of lower league teams, at least in the next round, which will be interesting. Burton's reward for their win, they've got Leicester City, so another tough Premier League team at home, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I think Burton have a chance. I quite like the way they played yesterday, actually. So they're not by no means out of it. Leicester, I suppose, are gettable, especially if they do play a slightly second string team. So I expect that to be quite a good game. I think the Villa Wolves game, just for the neutral, will be a good game as well. I like the way that both of those teams are playing football at the minute, and it'll be interesting to see what comes forward. And of course, it is a Midlands derby, isn't it? Which means it's the most non-violent game of the draw.
Indeed. Well, look, anything can happen in the cup. The time is 3 minutes to 7.
This is Love Sport.
Mr. Davies, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus. Car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
When looking for the best possible deal for his car insurance, Jim went on a spokesmansaid.com and saved hundreds.
I'm Jim. I'm a radio presenter based in Glasgow. I couldn't believe how expensive the car insurance for our Citroen C4 Picasso was going to be from my existing insurer. I went on a Spokesman Said and saved an incredible £600. Just amazing.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
My mum and dad say that I don't need lots of sugar. I'm sweet enough already. So we used the Change for Life food scanner app to find out how much sugar is in our food and drink. It's surprising how much we found. So I put my detective hat on to find the healthier choices. Woohoo! Found one, Mum! You can be food smart too. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app today.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Love Sport Breakfast, me, Richard Lee and Patrick Christys. Reminiscing, weren't we, there, during the small interval we had.
Yes.
We've got a really interesting hour coming up. We're going to be talking, obviously, the big stories. Well, the big story last night was very much Carabao Cup related. United are through, which is the most important thing, but certainly wasn't the most convincing of nights. They beat Rochdale on penalties after drawing 1-1 in normal time. West Ham beaten heavily. Bournemouth as well, going down to Burton. Of course, West Ham losing to Oxford United. Wins for Liverpool and Chelsea. Chelsea very convincing. We'll touch on them
7-1.
at some point. Yes, 7-1 against Grimsby. Although left it late to score the majority of their goals, but we'll touch on that. Defeats as well. Sheffield United losing at home to Sunderland. Brilliant win for Sunderland. And of course, a young Brighton team lost at home to Aston Villa. And Wolves were through. Certainly wasn't comfortable against Reading, but we're going to be touching on all of them in a lot more detail in the next hour. As always, 0208 70 20 558 the WhatsApp. It's 7 o'clock.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7, the widower of murdered MP Jo Cox says he feels a bit sick at her name being used by Boris Johnson to convince MPs to resolve Brexit. Brendan Cox has been commenting after an angry session in Parliament. Labour's Paula Sherriff questioned the Prime Minister about what she called his inflammatory language.
Many of us in this place subject to death threats and abuse every single day. And let me tell the Prime Minister that they often quote his words: surrender act, betrayal, traitor. And I, for one, am sick of it.
Well, the PM dismissed that criticism, calling it humbug. The introduction of a minimum price for alcohol in Scotland has triggered a fall in the amount of people drinking. From May last year, the charge for booze had to be at least 50 pence per unit. People affected by the collapse of Thomas Cook are being warned to be aware of scams. Fraudsters have been contacting those with upcoming bookings to offer them fake refunds in order to get their bank details. Football, Manchester United booked themselves a League Cup fifth trip to Chelsea, but only after needing penalties to get past Rochdale last night. They won the shootout with the League One side 5-3 after the match finished 1-1 at Old Trafford. Manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer says he's delighted they're able to scrape through.
As you normally are, when it gets tight, you're happy. When you win, you're through. That's our tradition, to do it the hard way.
Oxford pulled off a big shock as they thrashed West Ham 4-0, while Liverpool beat MK Dons 2-0 to set up a tie with Arsenal at Anfield. In the Scottish League Cup, holders Celtic will play Hibs in the last four after thrashing Partick 5-0. Meanwhile, Rangers secured a tie with Hearts following a 1-0 win at Livingston. Beyoncé is caught up in a trademark row over the use of her 7-year-old daughter's name. She says Blue Ivy is a cultural icon, but a wedding planner based in Boston says her business was using the name first. That's the latest. I'm Tim Jones.
Love Sport.
Did you get the milk? The Audi Q7 and the Audi Q8 for the epic, or the everyday. Now with an extra £1,000 towards your finance until 30th of September at 6.6% APR representative, only at your local Audi centre. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan, 18s and over, registered by 30th of September 2019, £1,000 available on selected model year 2019 stock vehicles only, subject to status. Indemnities may be required. Audi Financial Services, visit audi.co.uk.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport Breakfast with Richard Lee and Patrick Christys.
Good morning, Love Sport Breakfast on Love Sport Radio. Myself, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you until 10 a.m. Let's touch on some of the top stories this morning. First and foremost, Manchester United. They are through to the next round of the League Cup, but it certainly wasn't convincing. They drew with Rochdale on the night. However, they did win on penalties. More pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It was a bad night as well for West Ham. They went down heavily away at Oxford United, 4-0. Not so good for Bournemouth either, losing 2-0 to Burton. Better nights for Liverpool and Chelsea. Liverpool winning 2-0 away at MK Dons. Chelsea 7-1 against Grimsby. There's also a surprise at Bramall Lane. Sheffield United losing 1-0 to Sunderland, and a young Brighton team lost 3-1 at home to Villa. Wolves are through, but again, we're given a scare by Reading. They won on penalties, 4-2. We'll no doubt be talking a bit of rugby as well this hour. I am joined by the one, the only, Mr. Patrick Christys.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Man United.
Yes,
talk to me.
Well, Manchester United 1-1 in normal time against Rochdale, and they had to rely on young Mason Greenwood for their goal until, of course, 16-year-old Luke Matheson, remember the name, popped up.
Go on.
Well, he popped up and scored, didn't he? So it was 1-1, and then United won 5-3 on penalties.
Which, by the way, 16, you're right, 16 years old, and he's actually being looked at, they said, by several clubs, and no doubt after that performance yesterday and the goal. And in fairness, the way he carried himself, he was due to come off actually towards the end of the game and ended up staying on because of an injury, I think, to another Rochdale player. But he looked strong, even towards the end at that age. I think he's only just taken his GCSEs. I mean, it's extraordinary, really.
Yeah, well, look, fair play to him, and he may well go on to be one of those people that, that we do hear a lot about in future. It's bad times for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United. They might have won the game, but they didn't really win. 31 shots and they managed to find the net once. I think he's just exposed some gaping holes, and it's all very well and good talking about blooding youngsters and this, that, and the other. But I mean, I'm not convinced how good those youngsters are. When you look at, say, Phil Foden, for example, who can't get a game at City. I mean, he'd be captaining this United team, wouldn't he?
Yeah, indeed. That Mason Greenwood, United wouldn't have scored a single goal against Astana at home, West Ham away, and Rochdale at home.
This is it, isn't it?
Do you know what? This is it. So we're then taking the positives, which would be a Greenwood. We take the positives from this season, which may well be Daniel James, of course. But you're actually looking then. Look, it's very easy to generalise and be, well, they're not doing it at the moment. Watching that last night, who are the players that are creating the issue? Or do you think it's more a case of, because this is the other thing with United that I seem to see, is that when they have to come up against a team and break them down, they don't have that inventiveness. Whereas you watch like a Liverpool City, they will cut through teams, knife through butter, goal after goal, and once they're up, they're up. It's very hard to then come back against the Liverpool City. Whereas with United at the moment, they're getting the worst of both worlds, where they're not able to hold on to leads. That's certainly been the case a few times this season. They're better against teams that come on and come at them. So, i.e. Chelsea on the opening day, where they were very good, in fairness. And, they counter-attack well, and they have got pace going forward. But if a team doesn't come at them, and they just sit back, and they have banks of four, then United don't seem to have a way to unlock the door.
Yeah, that's it. And so Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has reverted to counter-attacking football, which is, pretty shoddy, especially when you're struggling to keep a clean sheet, really. And, yeah, there is that kind of lack of creation there. And the thing is, though, when people go, OK, well, they shouldn't have got rid of Lukaku. And, OK, there is a case for that. But Lukaku wasn't this creative force. He got on the end of stuff, and he gave defenders a headache. But he wasn't creating things. He didn't carve through teams on his own, did he?
Well, isn't this the classic one where you miss a player when they're gone? I mean, let's be honest, when he was there, I don't think there were many United fans that were that enamoured with Lukaku.
Well, it was that, wasn't it? I mean, when you went to Vegas for a while, because initially I was thinking, take him or leave him.
Yeah.
I don't really think the show lives or dies by Rich Lee. And then it was only when you were away that, gosh, you added millions to your value by virtue of leaving, actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And then I've come back, and within the day, I've read some of the tweets you put out last night, which were disappointing, to say the least. But
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. We're here together. We've got a working relationship.
Yes, let's have a chat about Chelsea, because we know West Ham got thumped 4-0 by Oxford, but Chelsea won 7-1 against Grimsby.
They did, which was, look, they're of course expected to win, but isn't this what we're expecting? Like, no disrespect to Grimsby, because no, to go to Stamford Bridge, of course, it's always going to be very tough. But isn't this what we're expecting? And by the way, it was a reasonably young team. Brilliant to see, obviously, Hudson-Odoi on the score sheet. I mean, they left a lot of their goals late. Batshuayi scoring in the 86th minute, Hudson-Odoi in the 89th, an 82nd minute goal. So in fairness to Grimsby, until certainly midway in the second half, I think it was 2-1 for a long period of time. And then, of course, Chelsea turned the screw a bit towards the end. Oh, sorry, it was 3-1 at half-time. Then they turned the screw towards the end. So it wasn't like, probably wasn't a 7-1 in some ways. But from Chelsea's point of view, this is exactly what it should be. You're playing against a team from League Two. This is exactly how the game should go.
Yeah, that's business as usual. It's the first time Chelsea have scored 7 goals in a game since beating Aston Villa 8-0 in December 2012. Look, a really good performance, but that's how it's supposed to be. And, this is textbook, this, from Lampard, where, okay, you're never in trouble, really, with this team. You're brushing them aside. Batshuayi is a guy who's not necessarily going to get too many games this season, although he might do, you never know. Scoring twice, that's good, though. You want to get him on the score sheet, so as and when you need to bring him on, he's ready. And Callum Hudson-Odoi, this guy who's been out with a very lengthy injury. He's just signed a new contract at the club. He comes back, first game back, gets a goal. It's exactly what you wanted as a manager that game.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for Chelsea at the moment. Of course, there are issues, and there's certain things they need to sort out. And there was an interesting interview of Arsene Wenger, which we're going to play shortly, where he talks about the youth and actually... Yeah. Essentially, he was saying, well, we'll get the quote shortly, but what he was saying was that you put in a 20-year-old, they might have more ability, they might deserve it, but you're guaranteed to get certain mistakes over the period of a season, whereas you put in a 28-year-old, might be less talented, but you've got more certainty. And we're seeing that with Chelsea, aren't we?
We are, but what Chelsea have is a few experienced players. You've got people like Cesar Azpilicueta, or Dave, as he's known in the Chelsea dressing room, who have been around the block a little bit. You've got a few others as well who are, they've like I said, they're experienced. And so when you are blooding this youth, they've got people there who can go, well, you have played in a Europa League final, or probably some of the Champions League final, etc., that kind of thing. Whereas at Manchester United at the moment, it's all very well and good blooding the youth and going, right, well, they're gonna make some mistakes, and that's fine. But you haven't got anyone around them there who is experienced enough to help them out. And Paul Pogba's not the type of guy that is going to do that.
And this is, look, we've got the issue on the radio show here. Of course, we're both very young, exuberant. We're fantastic at what we do. But, of course, you were prone to the odd mistake from time to time. And that's why we have Kieran here.
Is he asleep? He's asleep.
Oh, he's asleep again. Kieran. There we go. There he is.
Right,
he's back in the game. Fantastic. Right, what are Chelsea getting right that United aren't getting right at the moment when it comes to blooding the youth?
Okay.
Or is it simply a case that the youth is just that much better at Chelsea?
I think there's a case for that. I think there is a case for that. Because when we're talking about youth as well, what are we really talking about now at United? Because you've got Daniel James. Now, Daniel James, I think, would get into this Chelsea team. I think he's clearly a very good player. Rashford isn't that young anymore in terms of experience-wise. He's been around for a few seasons. Jesse Lingard is surprisingly older. She's like 27 years old, so he's not really young anymore. Mason Greenwood, I would look at him and go, all right, is he better than Tammy Abraham? No, not yet, but, maybe one day. You're looking around and going, actually, that it's not been this kind of regular conveyor belt of talent that you would expect from United. It's all very well and good just using the phrase class of 92 all the time. But
which
they're
we
not,
do regularly.
But they're not as good as them. That Paul Scholes would have absolutely had anyone's pants down in this kind of United setup at the moment when he was 17.
So for me, here's another little one for you. What is done in the dark will come to the light. Oh, gosh. It's fantastic on that one.
Sick of this.
But right, what's happened at Chelsea over the last... that was a little bit
Everyone's
harsh.
sick of it.
Are they?
Yeah, everyone.
No one said it to me
other
other
than
than you.
While you're away, I'm really, really happy that Rich is no longer pontificating about proverbs on air.
Right, so what happens in the dark comes to the light. And what I was going to say is Chelsea, they've been planning for this for the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. Like, if you look back 10, 15 years ago, when United's youth team was much better than Chelsea's, and now all of a sudden Chelsea's has become fantastic. They've put this environment in place, both in terms of the training ground that they've got and the competitions that they're putting their kids into. They're going abroad, they're doing all the kind of things that's going to build talent. I just think they're so far ahead of United in that department. And this isn't something United can do overnight. This is something that's been 10 years in the making. And now Chelsea, largely because of the transfer ban that they've got, but now they're seeing the rewards from the last 10 years worth of work that they've done.
Yeah, and what's very telling is that Manchester United's academy used to be kind of the one, especially around the northwest.
Yeah.
Now, loads of former United players have their kids at Manchester City's academy.
Yeah.
Right. So if you look around at that now, I mean, it's nuts how many of them are actually there. I mean, Paul Scholes tried to get his lad in there. I know Robin van Persie, when he was actually playing for Manchester United, his son was playing in Manchester City's academy. There's a fair few others as well, and you just think, well, that's kind of a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah, another one for you. Success breeds complacency. Complacency breeds failure. You know,
I don't know what you want me to do with that.
Well, no, again, that's Man United, because I just think that they were so far ahead. I just wonder whether they moved and continued to improve when they needed to with the youth system, because look, they were winning the Youth Cup most years from memory, and they haven't now for a long period of time. And it will be the likes of Chelsea and Man City, from what I understand, have won it the majority of the last 10 years or so. And it comes back to that, where I just think that actually we're talking about blooding the youth. Every team wants to blood the youth, but ultimately, if they're not good enough, they're not good enough. It doesn't matter if you try and force the issue, they're going to come in and at some point they're going to fall down. And the other part to it is as well, and we're going to keep touching on this, but it comes down to that culture. It can't be made too easy for the academy players to come in and get a chance in the first team. And when they do get that chance, it needs to be that you fit in with the culture that's already been created. And looking from the outside, looking in, I'm not sure that the culture is anywhere near what it needs to be at Man United.
So we're going to hear from Arsene Wenger very shortly, and it's quite important what he said here about his way of approaching playing young players. Now, there's a key distinction for me that needs to be made from what you're about to hear from Arsene Wenger and what's going on now at Manchester United, and to an extent Chelsea, but more so Manchester United. Arsene Wenger had the option to play young players as opposed to maybe a 32-year-old centre-back. Manchester United, I think we can bracket it as this rebrand, this kind of youth focus. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer doesn't have any other option. He's not got, Sanchez on the bench. He's not got Lukaku on the bench. And this business of, oh, look, this is the way we're choosing to go about things. No, this is the squad that you've got. This is the players that you have to play.
And yet their wage bill is as high as it is.
It's gone up by 12%, Rich, their wage bill.
Which doesn't make sense. Well, look, we're going to be talking more about Arsene Wenger. We'll get that clip for you very shortly. It's 7:15.
Believe me, he who laughs last thinks slowest. Ha ha ha, see, that was a laugh because I'm clever enough.
Love sport. Are you being fobbed off by a company? Are they letting you down? And are your complaints falling on deaf ears? We can help you out. Come to aspokesmansaid.com and we will give you a voice and a platform to raise your complaints. As recommended in the Daily Telegraph, aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Whoa! Look how much saturated fat is in these chocolate biscuits. It's surprising how much is in our food and drinks. For us kids, eating too much saturated fat can lead to harmful fat building up inside, which we can't see, increasing the risk of heart disease or stroke when we get older. So be food smart. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app. and start making healthier choices today.
This is Love Sport.
Last Sport Breakfast. Me, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you until 10 a.m. Of course, we're going through a lot of the Carabao Cup action from last night. We're going to be speaking to Mark Flanagan very shortly, Love Sport's Northwest correspondent, in particular talking about Manchester United, who, of course, did make their way through last night, but only just drawing Rochdale winning on penalties. We're going to be talking more about the rugby shortly too. Of course, England take on the USA, 11:15 a.m. We'll be talking about that very, very shortly. But as mentioned, we do have Mark Flanagan on the line. Morning, Mark.
Morning, Patrick. Morning, Richard.
Morning. Good morning. Well, in the end, United made their way through, and Ollie Solskjaer touched on the fact that when you're playing in the Cup, that's all that is really important. However, I don't think we necessarily believe that.
No, he's. I was at Old Trafford last night, and it was interesting watching Solskjaer. Obviously, watching stuff on the pitch wasn't great. So when Solskjaer did venture into the technical area, it was really sort of interesting the way he looked quite lost, really. He looked like a bit of a broken man, and there's a report actually that's come out of Italy that United have been in contact with Allegri, who obviously was so successful at Juventus, stepped down at the end of last season after 5 years of being a serial winner. And I just wonder if Ollie's kind of is running out of ideas, and I think that's possibly filtered through to the board. Obviously, United aren't going to confirm or deny any kind of approach if one actually has been made, but it wouldn't be a huge surprise if potential replacements are being sounded out, because if this carries on, if they're not in contention for top four at Christmas, I wouldn't be surprised if they acted, the United board.
Well, do you know what? The other one I heard was Allegri to Spurs. I wonder whether we'll see a little triangle where it's Allegri into Spurs, Poch into United, because obviously that was one that was discussed at length. Well, not this time last year. It was around Christmas time, wasn't it? So I wonder whether that could be a possibility. Yeah,
but you have to wonder whether that is going to be really attractive to Pochettino. I think, if Pochettino hasn't had the funds and the backing, and he hasn't got the confidence in the Spurs board, who are particularly have got a good reputation. I think he knows what goes on at United, and I think he knows that they are a club going the wrong way, and I find it hard to believe that someone with his reputation, although it has been. It's had the sheen taken off it in the early start of the season, that he would consider going to United. They're not an attractive proposition. They're a long way away from top four at the moment, and he would need a lot of money to kind of turn things around. Look at the squads compared to the two squads at United and Spurs Spurs are so far advanced compared to what United have got. It was difficult. It was a difficult watch. There was a lot of abuse aimed at Chong, who looks like a player who is just completely stage struck. The stage looks too big for him. It was quite embarrassing at times watching the lad. He's only 19, but it just looks way beyond him compared to someone like Mason Greenwood, who obviously is a lot younger, who just looks at home at Old Trafford.
Yeah. Just on that, just talk to me a little bit about the atmosphere at Old Trafford last night, because you don't really get it by watching it on the telly, and they kind of you only hear what the microphones allow you to hear. So, what was the overall mood like? Were there any kind of flashpoints? Are they turning on Ollie? Are there any players, and he touched on Chong there, that are being dug out now?
It was particularly Chong, actually. That was the stuff that I was picking up, and Pereira as well, who, he didn't help himself by almost escorting the Rochdale goal scorer to the goal last night. That was picked up by a few people around me. But I think there was grumbling about Ollie, because there's a feeling that players are being played out of position. But it got really bad. One guy shouted to me, we might as well be playing with 10 men. Shouted it over my shoulder at Chong. I mean, it's not thousands of people, so it's not going to be really heard by him on the pitch. But obviously, it's interesting to hear the sort of feeling that he's not ready. But that it's not really his fault. like you said, United are playing the youth because what else can he do? A lot of the senior players have been sold and not replaced, so Solskjaer's got a problem.
What's the body language like of the players though? Because again, you're there, you can see all the little things that you don't see just on whatever particular camera shot that we see on the telly. Are you seeing a lot of players that have that kind of 1,000-yard stare of just being quite lost? Do you think they are playing for Solskjaer? Do they look like they know what they're supposed to be doing on the pitch?
Well, when you're as far away as me, it's quite obviously hard to.
You're in the cheap seats.
Well, it's not hard to be quite far away when you're at Old Trafford, and sometimes when you watch it on TV, you get to see the kind of body language a bit better. You can watch the coach. Interesting feeling was quite often the guy who would come out of the technical area, and a couple of times that Ollie ventured. The one that I really noticed is when he came out and strode out and didn't know what to say, which was really interesting. You think he's got something up his sleeve that he's going to say, and he just stood there. I was in the position to be able to sort of see his face. So obviously Pogba gave another great impression of someone who didn't care, because I think deep down he doesn't, and I think he's an isolated incident. I think the guys are trying. I just think that there's too many who just aren't up to the task at the moment.
Yeah, just on the interview afterwards as well. I don't know if you've seen it, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
I didn't see it.
He was asked about. He was asked about the game, obviously, and what he said in the change room after the game. And effectively, he said, to the words of, "Well, it's none of your business." Which, essentially it kind of is, really. People want to know, okay, what is it that you're saying to the team? Because something's not right. And are you the man that's going to help inspire? Are you giving that precise kind of information? Because that's the only bit that I worry, or not the only bit, there's several bits, but one of the things I worry about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is it feels like there's a lot of sound bites. It's like we know Donald Trump loves a sound bite.
He thinks, what would Fergie say? And then that's what he tries to say.
It does feel a bit like that. Like he'll come out and he'll have a certain line that he'll use. It's always about the Man United way. But the Man United way surely has to have evolved. And I don't know. I look at this now in the interviews, whereas you had that man that initially got the job on that sort of part-time caretaker basis, and he was very excited by it, and it was like a kid in a sweet shop, and I'm so lucky to be here, and they're amazing, and everything was going so well. Now when he's giving the interviews, there is more of an edge, and you can almost see the pressure on him.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this last night as Solskjaer as a man. If you think about all the sort of great managers, they've almost had quite a bit of adversity in their life, and they've had to overcome it one way or another, whether it's in life or on the football pitch. And in his career, Solskjaer was a man who had a wonderful career and enjoyed the greatest time that any footballer could possibly enjoy, pretty much. And I just wonder whether he, in his character, has that kind of ability to sort of, that thing of having to overcome and finding a way, because I've always thought that he just doesn't quite have that in him. And I think, like you said, is that feeling of genuine. I think he's a nice guy, and he's doing his best. But when it doesn't feel quite genuine, and you're talking to the players on a day-to-day basis, that feeling will really ripple through the squad. And that feeling of, do we really believe in him, and does he really believe in what he's saying, or is it all a little bit for effect? And if that feeling is persuasive in enough players in the dressing room, then you will lose the dressing room very quickly. Because the one thing at the top level of any sport is you can't fool these guys. You can't fool top professional sportsmen. And I think that's always been my big worry with Solskjaer, is that the players really won't believe in him in the long term. And I think when you've got an influential person like Pogba in the dressing room who would expect and demand the best, and obviously people like Rashford and Lingard, who've played a lot of international football, they've been coached by really good coaches, and other players have as well. And I think that is a huge worry, and I think that will obviously, until the results turn around, it could quickly unravel. And never mind top four, if United could be bottom half of the table. Quite easily at Christmas. They've played Wolves, Palace, West Ham, Southampton, Rochdale, Astana, and Leicester, and they only won 2 games and only scored 6 goals. What's going to happen when they come up against Liverpool and Man City, and they got Arsenal on Monday night? if Arsenal score early, I can see it turning quite ugly at Old Trafford, because there's a feeling of it's been embarrassing, but they don't want to be humiliated 3-0 against Arsenal, who haven't got a great record at Old Trafford. So they've got a lot of away games in October. And then it gets tough in November. So United with their fixtures should be near the top of the table. And it's interesting that they've got the same amount of points as Chelsea, but the feeling at the two clubs is so different, because you've got a real great sense at Stamford Bridge that Frank Lampard really knows what he's doing. He's got a team going in the right direction. They've had some tough fixtures and they've been a little bit unlucky. Whereas at United, the feeling is completely different. They've almost been lucky to pick up 8 points.
I think this is the one thing that stands out for me is that with Fergie, people were scared of him a little bit. I mean, they respected him, they loved him, but you were scared of him. I mean, I'm terrified of him. I never met the bloke. Do you know what I mean? And I think as well with Chelsea, with Frank Lampard, I do think the players probably are a little bit scared of him, because he obviously doesn't take any nonsense. He knows what he's on about, and he's won it all. And so I think there is that sense of an aura about him. Are any of these United 16-year-olds scared of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, really? And I think that's the type of thing that maybe if you are putting the youngsters forward, you want them to be a little bit terrified of your reaction if they play badly.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, just quickly as well on that point, I know you want to move on, but he also does this thing with nicknames, and he calls them Rashi and thing, and he does that Steve McLaren thing as well, where I think he wants to be friends with them, but he also wants to be their manager, and I think Lampard's very good at that. I think he keeps his distance, and he engenders a feeling of respect, whereas Solskjaer is not quite doing that, and I think that's another thing. Another sort of thing, a black mark against his name, really.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. The word respect. I think it's a slightly different feeling towards a manager. Mark, thank you very much as always. Mark Flanagan, Love Sports Northwest correspondent, giving us the latest on Manchester United. Of course, they scraped past Rochdale. Just very quickly, Patrick, because I guess a lot of people said at the time whether this was going to be too big for him as a role, whether going in didn't necessarily have the experience that other managers have. Will there be a lot of managers looking at this and almost be slightly happy that? Because you can almost imagine if someone comes in, they've never really done it before. I know he did it at Cardiff, but wasn't really successful. Yes, he's done it abroad to an extent. But for someone to come in without having had that big experience, and he made it look so easy to begin, which if I'm honest, I was looking at it thinking, do you know what, I could probably step into management. Like, why not? It doesn't seem that difficult. You don't need to have loads of experience. Step in. Frank Lampard's doing it to an extent. It almost makes you think, well, actually, do we overvalue the role of a manager? Now the fact they're struggling, you start to wonder, actually, is this where those top managers, it's not just as simple as being a enigmatic figure and a charismatic figure. Actually, it is the details. It is the tactical details that you've got. It's knowing when to make substitutions. It's the way you use your man management to get the best out of players. It's creating that culture. It's creating your own self. You mentioned it there, that he doesn't necessarily have that aura about him that
he doesn't. He drives a Volvo and refuses to park in the manager's spot at Carrington. I mean, there's no ego there whatsoever. You need a bit of ego. It reminds me of when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather, and everyone who was a boxer was coming out and going, well, look, if Conor McGregor wins, this kind of makes a mockery of boxing.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, and actually what happened was Floyd Mayweather could have knocked him out any time he wanted, and he made it go on for 10 rounds, and eventually Conor McGregor got stopped because he was knackered. Floyd Mayweather could have stopped that any time he liked. He was never trouble. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now with Solskjaer, where it would have maybe made a mockery of top-level, elite-level, Champions League-level management if this essentially Norwegian PE teacher can just rock up and take charge,
It's kind of like the little scrap we had. Any time I could have...
Any time, any place, Rich. I've told you that before.
Let's make it happen. 29 minutes to 8.
This is Love Sport.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in?
No.
Mr. Davis, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus, car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
I love my brother. We do fun things like playing together. I like having hugs with Freddie. Freddie gives the best hugs. Freddie used to be very poorly, and the doctor said he might need a new liver. Then one day, a very nice person gave their liver to Freddie. It was amazing. We were so happy. Now he's around to give me more hugs than ever.
Tell your family you want to save lives. To find out more, visit organdonation.nhs.uk.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
This is Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast. Me, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys. Time is 27 minutes to 8. Interestingly, we're talking a lot of United this morning, but of course it was a disappointing night last night. Although they did get themselves through, they only drew with Rochdale at home in the Cup, of course, going through on penalties, yet more pressure on Ole Solskjaer. Just to touch on the fact that, of course, when he did take over as United manager, he had that incredible run, and it was very, very impressive. Key, though, was that the games they played at the time, and I think it's very easy to overlook this, they weren't particularly tough games on paper. So, of course, Mourinho had a couple of tough games from memory, and I think it was a defeat, and they decided to make the decision to move on. And then the first games that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had was Cardiff, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Spurs, Brighton, Burnley. Now, from memory, obviously they won the majority of them, might have been all of them, but from memory, the Spurs game they won, but it was the David De Gea masterclass, if we remember rightly. I think he made 11 saves or something, and they, in fact, they drew with Burnley, but they won the rest of those games. Yeah. And so on paper, it was fantastic. But then if you were to take, it's that emotion fitting the fact. And actually, if you were to look at the facts are, of course, they should have beaten Cardiff, Huddersfield, Bournemouth, with that disrespect, who had a dreadful run last season, let's not forget. Newcastle, again, Brighton, who were pretty poor last season. So actually, the results were exactly as expected. The toughest game of all them was Spurs. They should have got battered that day. It was just one of those anomalies.
Paris Saint-Germain as well. Let's not forget PSG.
True, which again, by the way, let's say that penalty decision doesn't go their way. I mean, look, you can look at this so many different ways. I suppose that's the point. And now, naturally, because things have turned south a little bit, it's very easy to look at the fact that maybe it's just a little bit too big.
And the noises that we're hearing today are that Manchester United, despite the fact that on the back of most national newspapers yesterday was a statement from Ed Woodward saying that he's going to stick with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we're hearing today that Massimiliano Allegri, a former Juventus manager, who I believe won 5 Serie A's on the bounce and got them to the final 6 on the bounce, sorry. So he's a serial winner, obviously. He is available. I'm free. He's free at the minute. The issue that I've got right now is, when do you sack him? Because United's next game is Arsenal.
Yeah.
Then you've got AZ Alkmaar, of course, Newcastle. But then you've got Liverpool. Then you go, okay, Partizan Belgrade, fine. Okay, Norwich, fine. But then you've got Chelsea. And you got Bournemouth, Partizan, Brighton, and then City. And you look at it and go, is there a good... Because what you want, when they got rid of Mourinho and they gave it to Solskjaer and he had that run of fixtures, brilliant. They don't have that now. And so you replace Solskjaer with a new manager who's got a weak team and he just gets spanked again.
Then you almost wait until they've had 2 or 3 of those tough games, and maybe it's that heavy defeat where it's, okay, enough is enough. I mean...
Can you imagine what City are going to do to this United team?
Well, if they play, I mean, I watched the game against Watford and I've never seen anything. That first 17 minutes, obviously watching it as a Watford fan, it was painful. But at the same time, I'm looking, thinking, this team are incredible. They can just cut you open over and over and over. It will be, but you're right.
You're not going to be able to go out of the house in Manchester wearing a United shirt after United play City. You're not going to be able to leave the house.
Interestingly, though, you mentioned it, Allegri, he is single at the moment.
Yes.
Pochettino's in an unhappy relationship.
He is.
Manchester United aren't happy with their relationship at the moment.
Yeah.
I can see that, we've got a few little swaps going on here.
Really?
Allegri fits in at Spurs. That's quite a nice little match, I think. If I were to be Cupid, I would say that works.
Okay.
And then Pochettino, I think he's sick of his relationship, let's be honest.
He's sick and tired.
He's sick and tired. And actually, he's been keeping an eye out on Manchester United for a little while, hasn't he?
What are his options,
I saw when Manchester United walked past and his eyes just followed Manchester United. A bit worrying. I can just see that happening. I really can.
Allegri's just rampant.
You know what Allegri's like? He is a serial winner. Let's talk a bit of Wenger, because there was an interesting quote from Wenger which we can hear now.
I play a young central defender of 20 years old. I know he will cost me points in the season. And I have to stand up for that. If I play a 28-year-old centre-back, maybe less talented, it will cost me less points. But I will not give a chance to a young player. And at some stage, I must say, as a manager, sometimes you feel lonely to stand up there and say, no, I want this boy to play because he deserves it. But just to deserve it, I know as well that he will make mistakes. Because you learn your job at 23 years of age, 23, 24, you have a player. But until 23, we make up and down. I just want to say how Paul spoke about is how terrible the selection is for young people. To give you a number, between 16 and 20, people are professional. 67% of them are not anymore in football at the age of 21.
Yeah, that's right.
And not even in football anymore.
At all.
At all.
They go off the rails, don't they? So their whole life.
And that is already the elite of the elite, the guys who are in the academies, you know, that shows you how difficult it is. And I would say as well, the other thing that we noticed by making the psychological profile of the young boys is that the stamina in the motivation is more important than the intensity of the motivation. That means those who resists to frustration, when a guy has a low rate, for example, 0 to 10, if there's a 2 or 3 in stamina of the motivation, he doesn't survive. Because you have to deal with frustration, with disappointment, with not being selected, and still keep going. And those who keep going make it. At some stage, it is a meeting of an attitude. All these guys, they have been questioned, you know, will he make it or not? And you had people who said, no, he will never make it. But they kept going. And at some stage, when you have the attitude, you meet somebody, I give you a chance. And that is always a meeting between an attitude and somebody who gives you a chance in life. That's absolutely 100% for everybody.
Not a word.
No.
No, sorry. If anyone didn't catch any of that, we'll...
Oh, we're being told to behave. Sorry about that. That was Arsene Wenger.
It was very interesting.
Just out of interest, did anyone else feel like, first bit of that, great. Then he just forgot where he was and stopped making sense.
The back end, I actually...
Just undoes his dressing gown, wanders off.
No, actually, the back end, when he was talking about the stamina and motivation, I do fully appreciate, because I've seen a lot of young players, Patrick, come on, back in the room. I've seen a lot of young players. He's right that it's all good and well doing it in a fleeting burst. And we've seen a lot of players that will do that they'll be excited by the idea of progressing, increasing their talents, etc., to a point, and then they hit a bit of a brick wall. By the way, Manchester United, again, we spoke way too much about them today so far, I appreciate, but this is a good example of that, where you're touching on some of the players, some of the top players, where they get to a point and you feel like they've hit a bit of a level, they're plateauing. And I think that actually when you talk about the stamina and motivation and younger players coming through, I think it is that. It's then who's got that prolonged. And the point you make early on about having the older players and the younger players, again, I think is key, because I think this is where managers far too often, it's short-termist, where it's very much about the here and now. Look, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the moment, he doesn't really care about 2 years' time, 3 years' time, what Man United looks like, because he might not be here in 2 or 3 games. So this is the issue that managers have, is that, yes, they understand how important it is to bring the young players in, but when their job just isn't secure, when they're getting a vote of confidence, which might mean that he's gone in a few weeks, then does it matter if Mason Greenwood goes on to become some world-class player, because he might not get to see it?
Well, look, it's, I mean, that's exactly it, isn't it, really? And this idea, it's all very well and good having a project, but I think you're an idiot as a manager, aren't you, if you buy into the idea that whoever owns the football club is just going to give you 3 years. Yeah. It doesn't happen.
Which
they
is,
all
by
say
the way,
it,
which
but
it
doesn't happen.
It should. I mean, this is one of my issues with football in general, is that you bring a manager in and you'll give him a 3 or 4 year contract and you'll sack him after 6 months. Now, if you've done your due diligence well enough and you know that you've got someone who's going to build the football club, it doesn't necessarily happen on the pitch straight away. This is part of it. And in fairness to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, as much as he is getting stick today, and maybe this is too big for him, the point is he hasn't had long enough to actually make it his team. Yeah. It's Alex Ferguson. If he was manager now and gone through the same run, he'd have been sacked. Like, I think everyone agrees on that. He would have been sacked before he finally got things right at Manchester United. It took him years to get things right at Man United. People talk about the game against Notts Forest, the Mark Robins goal, which kept him his job. Like, really, he could have been sacked 4 or 5 times before that. Yeah. So that for me is the issue with this, is that if you're going to put a manager in place that you believe to build that football club, you almost need to say, we're giving you 5 years to build the infrastructure, make it your team, and we have trust in you to do that.
Well, look, I've tied us on perfectly to what I want to talk about next, which is Mauricio Pochettino at Spurs. There's in a lot of the papers today just pointing out exactly where it's gone wrong for Poch. And Spurs points after 6 Premier League games under Poch since he took charge. It's the they've got 8, obviously. It's the joint lowest since his first season. And it is a marked decrease from the 14 points he had in 2016, 17, 11, the year before last, and 12 last season. And this is the thing, though, where they point out exactly where it's gone wrong for Poch. And it's worth saying as well that actually Max Allegri is still waiting in the wings here now. We know that he is potentially being tapped up by Manchester United. We know that clearly Spurs are apparently interested in him, and he's just hovering over them like a kind of Italian hawk. But 4 headaches here from Mauricio Pochettino. Relationships. Hey, you and me both, Mauricio. But Pochettino admitted after the Shock Cup tie, we need time to build togetherness again. This is the team that walked barefoot over hot coals for him before the Champions League final, that snapped arrows with their feet. You know, this is the team that did all that, and now that they're not able to essentially string a few passes together. Contracts. This is an interesting one, which would point out that several players knew that he wanted them out at the end of the season. So Danny Rose, Serge Aurier and Victor Wanyama know that the club wanted to sell them to raise funds, and then they didn't go. So this is the fact that you've got a lot of people in there now who maybe realise that perhaps they don't really have the manager's backing, and they feel it feels a bit hollow, doesn't it? I think the idea that you wouldn't go and die for the shirt, would you? Also contracts in terms of Christian Eriksen, Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, they can all walk away for free next summer. So that's an issue. That is an issue. And clearly as well, the manager himself, Poch has flirted more than won't say it. He's been flirting with other clubs, left, right, and centre.
He's dating at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, he's one of those people who's in a relationship but has a Tinder profile that he hopes his missus never finds out about.
Did he swipe left or right when Man United came up?
Swipe right.
Yeah.
Super liked.
Conversation's getting a little bit weird. It is interesting. You're right, but this comes back to, I guess we talk a lot about environment, we talk a lot about culture, but it is that. It's actually, you look at the very best clubs, you look at the Liverpools and Man Cities, where there needs to be the competition for places, but it needs to be healthy, where everyone feels like they know where they stand. I give the example from time to time of Brendan Rodgers when I played for him at Watford. And I didn't play a game for him for, 6 months. I was on the bench. But I actually really enjoyed him as a manager. And the reason being was that he would regularly keep me informed as to where I was, what I needed to do to get closer to the team. Now, at the time, the goalkeeper playing did very well and I didn't get that close to it. But I always felt like I knew that I was valued and I knew that I was getting closer and closer. And I just feel that at Tottenham and at Manchester United as well, you just wonder whether that relationship is there between player and manager, whether there is that harmony within the squad, or whether you've got so many bad eggs, so many people that aren't happy with their situation, that can then infiltrate a lot of the others. You know, people often use the term like having a cancer within the squad, and there is some truth to that. The second you've got 1 or 2 that have switched off and they are integrated into the squad, negativity can spread.
Well, what Pep Guardiola has been very good at is moving at the right time. So moving at the point where it's debatably impossible to improve on what you've done, and the only way is down. And the fact is, I think Poch has just lingered a little bit long. I think he should have moved. I think he should have gone at the end of last season. I'm sorry, Spurs fans. I know I don't know. I've said that given you start of the season, you might feel the same way. But if he'd have gone, his stock can only go down from where it was at the end of last season.
Yeah.
And this is the thing where. This is why I'm not convinced that he would go and take a Manchester United job, because there's an element of risk there. Because you know what the Manchester United squad's like. Before you know it, your stock could fall again. And then your next job, people have stopped talking about you being the next Real Madrid manager or the next Juventus manager. And you are looking at going in at somewhere like, just somewhere a bit lower down, essentially. And I think that's the risk that he's got to play. If I was Poch now, I wouldn't be going to Manchester United. I'd want to go for a safer bet. I'd want to go to a Juventus. I'd want to go to a Real Madrid, a team that you just know. You just know that it's going to be a little bit easier for you.
Is there not the argument, though, that whoever were to come in, if Solskjaer, we're talking almost as if it's going to happen very soon.
I think.
Well, I'm not so sure it will. I mean, we'll come back to that. But if it were to happen, I just think whoever comes in next, look, it's a giant of a club. The revenue's the biggest in the world, and they're massively underperforming. So if anything, the only way is up. Surely they can't get any worse than what we've been seeing recently. We spoke earlier to Mark Flanagan. He was saying, as it stands, you wouldn't even guarantee a top 10 finish, which I think is true. I think the games that I've seen this season, I'm not saying to you they are guaranteed to finish in the top 10.
No, I think the thing with United as well is you got to have a look at who's in charge overall. Woodward. I mean, what's happened, and I think that at some point there will have been a meeting between Woodward and the Glazers after probably maybe 2 or 3 years after Fergie retired, where they've looked at it and gone, right, it's not happening, is it? We're not continuing to win everything. Do we now just go down the route of being this commercial juggernaut, maybe getting young players in with high resale value and doing that and settling for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th? And I think that conversation's been had, and I think that we all know the upshot of that conversation. The only thing is now it's gone even worse than they probably planned for. So it's always going to be a tricky thing if you're going to come in as Pochettino, because he says he hasn't had enough backing maybe from Daniel Levy, and I can understand that. But what backing is he going to get from Ed Woodward, a man who just seems incapable in the transfer market?
That's a fair point. What do you think? 0208 70 25 58 on the WhatsApp. Of course, we are live on YouTube. Thanks to those that are tuned in currently. And as always, you can get in touch on the socials at Love Sport Radio. The time is 12 minutes to 8.
I am what would happen if the comments section became human and ran for president.
Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
There are many things a mother can pass on to her baby. Her smile, her eye colour, and her immunity to whooping cough. Whooping cough is a very dangerous illness for young babies, and at the moment it's spreading fast. A simple vaccination during your pregnancy can help to protect your baby in their first weeks. Please speak to your GP, nurse, or healthcare professional and pass on your immunity.
Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast. Me, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you until 10 a.m. Interesting piece on the back of the Times, which we'll talk about shortly. We're going to talk some cricket next, but interesting piece on the back of the Times in regards to agents and new FIFA regulations that are coming in, which we'll just touch on very quickly now, which essentially they're going to put a limit on the agency fees, which has been an issue in football. And in fact, it was all sparked by Mino Raiola. Of course, the amount he got for Pogba, which leaked documents said it was over 40 million he got in commission, which is, I mean, it's extraordinary, really, when you consider it.
It's nuts. It is nuts. It is about time we reined it in. And dare I say as well, the whole Emiliano Sala saga and that sorry tale there where his plane obviously crashed into the channel. When you actually dig a bit deeper into what went on there with agents and the mess of it, and you think, actually, this raw greed of people behind the scenes, in the case of Emiliano Sala, did cost lives. It probably is time that we reined it in a bit.
Yeah, no, well, in fact, that moves on perfectly when we talk about rain. You know why?
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk some cricket and the issues that we've had with the rain. Nick Howson, the Cricketer magazine, is on the line. Morning, Nick.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning. The rain ruining the last round of the county championship.
Oh, it's been horrendous. I've been at Taunton the last couple of days, and it's been incredibly frustrating. We really, you would feel this summer really deserved a real fitting send-off, and it's just been a bit of a damp squib. And it's been very unfortunate. This was meant to be the title of the side between Somerset and Essex. Two teams really going at it. Somerset looking for their first ever title. Essex looking to win another, and we haven't got anything remotely, close to a contest. It's been awfully sad, and today might be just a case of just sort of turning up and really praying we get something quite extraordinary, really.
But the question to be asked, the fact that we are playing the last round of the county championship in the dying embers of September, it does feel a little bit late, or ordinarily is the weather okay at this time of the year?
No, I think I'm certainly not weatherman, so I'm not going to go into those sort of details. But should we be playing in the final full week of September? Absolutely no, absolutely not. And I think some people will probably, perhaps the ECB will look, say, we've had the World Cup and stuff. Well, unfortunately, this is probably going to happen next year as well. Things are going to be pushed towards the end of September again. So no, this is totally unacceptable. Just over a fifth of the season was played between June, July, and August this year. And when you're playing with those sorts of numbers and you're pushing the fixtures to the fringes, then really you are dicing with this sort of situation. Granted, yes, the English summer is a difficult one to predict. And the T20 Blast had a number of games that were rained off, and they were in the fulcrum of the summer. They put them, right in the best place possible so they can all happen. And there were a fair amount of games that were lost to weather there. It can happen, we know that. However, you're not helping yourself by putting it closer to Christmas than you are to the end of June.
You touched on, obviously, Essex looking likely or certain to win it now. Obviously, Somerset looks set to miss out on their first ever county championship. How much of a shame is that?
Well, a massive one. I mean, we've seen so many near misses, so I think this will be the sixth time they finished as runners up. They've even finished level on points before. Incredible, really, for them. Very unfortunate. It's probably getting to a point where it's almost becoming psychological, particularly with some of the players that perhaps missed out a couple of times, because there are a few of them there, of course. It's incredibly disappointing for them. It was very much in their hands with 3 games to go, and that's the thing to Hampshire. Last week, okay, fine, they would have backed themselves to win this game, I think, had it gone to the full 4 days. But they'll look back, I guess, on that Hampshire defeat and think that we had it in our own hands, and we could have been the ones, doing the rain dances this week. And very unfortunate from their perspective. But Essex has taken full advantage. They've got the best bowler in the championship in Simon Harmer. And they've been absolutely terrific, and they've got such a solid batting lineup that there's no doubt they certainly this is certainly well earned title from that perspective, and we should just be playing the violin for Somerset.
Yeah, indeed. A quick word on Trescothic and what is his last official day as a professional cricketer?
Yes, essentially, unfortunately, obviously not part of the Somerset team this week, and hasn't been for a while. Really, sort of took it upon himself to say, look, I don't think I'm at a point where I need to be playing in this team, and Somerset sort of agreed. Jason Kurtz, suggested that we took some time out, and hasn't been able to get himself back in the team. But yeah, no, I mean, he leaves English cricket certainly a much better place than when he arrived. I think, obviously his contribution with the bat at the top of the order for both Somerset and for England is obvious, and we can look at the numbers, etc. But I think, the way he leaves our perception of what constitutes mental health now, I think, is the most important legacy. He's changed the tone of the conversation around those issues with his own and with his book. Now they're treated in a far more, I guess, more significant, serious way now, thanks to him. So that's certainly his greatest legacy. There was a presentation to him on the opening day on Monday, and he certainly leaves with a great deal of affection. It'll be very interesting to see where he goes from here, whether he goes into a media position. He's a very eloquent speaker, and he has appeared on Sky Sports already, but potentially in a coaching role as well. I mean, you can imagine how beneficial he'd be, particularly with England and I guess the whole of international and county cricket struggling with opening at the moment. So yes, a sad day to lose him, but I think his contribution to cricket is certainly not over just yet.
Great stuff, Nick. As always, thank you very much. That's Nick Howson there, the Cricketer magazine, giving us his thoughts on the end of the county championship season. Just a quick word on the cricket, a more general one for you, Patrick. Has this been the best summer of cricket in your lifetime?
No.
Oh.
No, it's not. Because when we actually won the Ashes in 2005, that sense of raw national euphoria that gripped us, you all remember the scenes of everyone singing Jerusalem in Trafalgar Square, where Andrew Flintoff struggled to remember what day of the week it was shortly before urinating in the Prime Minister's garden. That was the best summer of cricket. That was when men were men and men were drinking lots. And I quite liked that. Whereas you look at it now and it's a bit like, yeah.
When people use the expression "the good old days,"
oh yeah,
it was that day.
Back yonder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it does come back to the urinating. It seems like we talk about that way too often.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, I always remember where I was the day I found that out. I think that's magnificent. No, look, it was a very, very good summer of cricket, but I think we just have to be a bit realistic about it. It's great that we won the World Cup. The fact is that we weren't really allowed to celebrate it. We weren't really allowed by the ECB, in my opinion. They went around and toured the Oval and some kids that were bunking off school. It wasn't really good enough.
Fair enough. What do you guys think? 0208 70 20 558. 3 minutes to 8.
Love sport.
Mr. Davis, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus, car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Henna men.
Cage.
Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're
secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're
Tenna men. Keep control.
Urine?
No.
Driving too close to the car in front gives you less time to react. You may not realize that you're tailgating. Leave a 2-second gap between you and the vehicle in front. When it's wet, leave a 4-second gap. By staying back, you give yourself time to react. Stay safe. Stay back. Highways England, connecting the country.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
This is Love Sport Breakfast, me, Richard Lee, and Patrick Christys. Patrick, you enjoying the show?
I am.
Fantastic. What's been your favourite bit so far?
The sausage and bacon butty that has just arrived for breakfast.
You are enjoying that. You got ketchup all over your mouth, haven't you?
Well, I thought we'd gone straight to the news and forgot that we have to do this thing called a talk up and be very professional about it. So apologies, listeners, and I hope I've still got a job tomorrow.
Indeed. We've got a big hour coming up. Do stay tuned. Of course, big game of rugby today. England taking on the USA, and we're going to be talking more about the Carabao Cup. Time is 8 o'clock.
On digital radio, online, mobile, and smart speaker.
This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 8, Boris Johnson's being criticised for telling MPs they should honour the memory of their murdered colleague Jo Cox by delivering Brexit. Exchanges got very heated in the Commons last night. The Prime Minister dismissed calls for him to stop using language like Surrender Act and sabotage. Conservative MP Nigel Evans says there were verbal attacks from all sides, though.
The Prime Minister was referred to as a cheat and corrupt by members of the opposition yesterday, and it was quite right that he hit back, because the anger within Parliament is nothing compared to the anger within the country.
A study's found Scotland's move to make sure alcohol costs at least 50 pence per unit has led to people drinking less booze. Experts say the rest of the UK should quickly bring in a similar policy. Research suggests more than a quarter of 11 to 16-year-olds in England and Wales have private tutors. The social mobility charity, the Sutton Trust, says schools should consider using the cash they get for their poorest pupils to prioritise more one-to-one teaching. UK car production increased by 3.3% last month, the first highest rise in over a year. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders says 92,000 were made here in August. Just a month after getting his GCSE results, Rochdale youngster Luke Matheson scored a stunning volley as his side took Manchester United to penalties in their League Cup fourth-round tie last night. The hosts eventually scraped through 5-3 on spot kicks at Old Trafford, but it was a night to remember for the 16-year-old. He says it's back to reality this morning, though.
I'm going tomorrow to make up for it when we've got a day off. So, got a psychology test tomorrow, so can't wait for that.
Oxford shocked West Ham 4-0, while Liverpool set up a home tie with Arsenal after a 2-0 win against the MK Dons. Celtic will play Hibs in the semi-finals of the Scottish League Cup, while Rangers will face Hearts in the last four. That's the latest. I'm Tim Jones.
This is Love Sport.
Hit the bullseye this October by becoming a sober hero and take a month-long break from the booze to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. No darting to the bar, no doubles. Just wake up happily hangover-free. Gain maximum respect and know that you'll be helping to change the lives of people with cancer. It's all in a month's work for a sober hero. So go sober for October and sign up today at gosober.org.uk. Game on.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport Breakfast with Richard Lee and Patrick Christys.
Good morning, Love Sport Breakfast. Myself, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys. We're being filmed right now. We're on YouTube. Feel free to tune in. Love Sport Radio on YouTube. As always, you can get in touch on WhatsApp 0208 70 20 558, on the socials at Love Sport Radio. Let's touch on the headlines this morning. Man United are through to the next round, although it wasn't particularly convincing. They drew a Rochdale last night. They won on penalties. It was a bad night for West Ham. Got beaten 4-0 by Oxford. Also a bad night for Bournemouth, losing to Burton 2-0. Better night for Liverpool and Chelsea. They are both successful in their ties against lower league opposition. Again, bad night for Sheffield United, losing to Sunderland. Villa won at Brighton and Wolves beat Reading on penalties. We're going to talk more about the Rugby World Cup. Of course, England take on USA at 11:15 this morning. We'll be touching on that too. Patrick Christys, how are we?
Yes, very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to the England-USA game. Make sure you do stay tuned to Love Sport here, because that game kicks off at the Rugby World Cup. England against USA at 11:15.
Just touching on that, do USA have a chance?
No.
Do they not?
No.
Because you know, I'm starting to make myself believe they do.
No, because what happens is with the USA, they get in the scrum, and then someone goes, hut, hi, and they throw the ball backwards, and then they just launch it forwards, and then someone runs, they catches it, they shout, touchdown, and then they go to a commercial break.
Yeah, and then the cheerleaders come on.
Yeah, cheerleaders, exactly. Then Madonna comes on at half-time.
There's a flag on the play.
Yeah.
No, we got some slight issues there. I don't know. I know that I think it was last time out. I think England were victorious against USA. I think 28-10. I think last time they played, which wasn't that convincing.
Yeah, look, we're a very good team. USA aren't a very good team. Crucially as well, this England rugby team is not managed by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and the players are not Manchester United. So there's every chance we might actually thrash these particular rugby minnows.
Well, on that note, of course, that is the big news today. United are through, but of course, more pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Look, one of the heroes last night for Rochdale was young Luke Matheson, only 16 years old. Let's hear from him.
I'm going tomorrow to make up for it when we've got a day off. So, got a psychology test tomorrow, so can't wait for that.
He's going into sixth form.
Does it matter? Do you know what I mean? As in, no, in terms of like, how on earth do you get yourself up for school?
No, but I actually think could you imagine, right? You're 16 years old. You've just done this. Could you imagine going into school? I'm buzzing now, thinking of how excited I'd be to go in and see my mates, and you would be an absolute legend for the day.
Yeah, you would, but more than just a day. But I mean, is he really paying attention in class after that?
No.
Nothing matters.
He's going to be daydreaming all day about last night, playing in front of that crowd, scoring the goal, etc.
I'd love it. What I really hope, right, is that he's still got one of those PE teachers that's like, could have made it as a pro, but had a bad knee injury when he was 15, and now he takes charge of whatever kind of particular Rochdale Comprehensive that he goes to, and he's there going, Luke, mate, Luke, one touch, come on, mate, one touch, knock it long, come on, Luke, come on, mate, get stuck in, Luke. And, just like, right, mate, I've just scored a goal at Old Trafford.
Well, apparently the school have got a new Norwegian PE teacher, as it goes. His name's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, apparently.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, look, fantastic night for him last night. Not so good for Manchester United. Just touching on the rugby, because I do want to talk about this a little bit more. USA head coach Gary Gold will pit his wits against Eddie Jones this morning.
You never know, the scoreboard in one of those games might be in our favour. So I think realistically, people who know the game as well as you guys do will be able to see whether the performance has been a credible performance. And, I've got a lot of confidence in this group of guys.
He's mugged you right off, hasn't it?
Gary Gold from Texas there.
Yeah.
From,
you really
Texas.
hear that southern drawl coming through. What you didn't hear there was when he just shot a few rifle rounds into the air afterwards, got on a horse and rode away.
Look, of course, England should win this game, but I don't think it is as cut and dry as you think it is. You're really proud of yourself for that.
Oh, no,
That's made your day.
As if the coach of the USA rugby team was going to be an American. We saw how it worked out for Bob Bradley, didn't we? Brad Babley. So it's not going to happen anyway. Sorry. Now look. So Eddie Jones has opted to rest Manu Tuilagi and a string of first choice players. 10 changes to the lineup that beat Tonga 35-3 in their first game. Just going to run through this England team for you now. We've got Marler, Cowan-Dickey, Cole, Launchbury, Cruz, Curry, Vunipola, who is central, and actually a lot of people think should have been rested for this because he is that key to this England team. Ludlam, Hines, Ford, Francis, Joseph, McConaughey, Cokanasiga and Daly.
Fantastic. We'll keep you informed of that. We're going to be talking to a guest shortly about this particular game.
Yeah, I know I kind of was a little bit disparaging towards the USA before, but let's be fair on them. They do have 4 Premiership players in their starting 15. It's not going to be the easiest of tests for England, but if you're here to win a World Cup, right, you've just got to dispatch the USA.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Moving back to a little bit of football, we've touched on United. It wasn't a particularly good night for them, although they did go through. West Ham, absolutely dreadful night for them, losing 4-0 against Oxford. I mean, I've seen the highlights of the game, and it looked pretty poor. They didn't really test the Oxford goalkeeper all that much. In fact, let's hear from Pellegrini, get his thoughts.
First, it's merit of the Oxford, and after that is lack of belief that these games are always very difficult for the team that is in the best league.
I mean...
Not a word again.
Not a word, bless him. No, look, he obviously he's disappointed.
Is he?
Obviously, he's not particularly happy with the performance, I've got no doubt. I mean, look, is this a case of you go to the likes of an Oxford United and you just underestimate them? Now, look, granted, they've got a very good manager in Carl Robinson. They've had a couple of good results recently. They won 6-0 away at Lincoln at the weekend. So they're coming into this with confidence. But is this a case of West Ham rocking up and thinking that we can put out effectively a second-string team and we will be way too good for Oxford, maybe not getting themselves quite up for the game in the way that they would for a Premier League game? And not only have they been beaten, but they've been dismantled by the League One team.
I think what's particularly poor is that it was 0-0 at half-time, and then they've just gone to pieces. The second that Oxford scored, there's 55 minutes and more scored to open the goals there. And then it went 71 minutes, 84 minutes, 90 plus 2 minutes. That's a capitulation, that, from a team that included, by the way, Jack Wilshere, Pablo Zabaleta, and, of course, Spain international Pablo Fornals. So that's a bad effort.
I want to touch on Jack Wilshere because in terms of where his
he'll be
career
playing
is
for
at.
Oxford United soon, won't he? He might as well make himself at home. He just wanders into the home dressing room and sits down.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's hear from Carl Robinson and get his thoughts on a memorable victory.
Putting smiles on people's faces and developing young players, and when they can bring all them things together and you can have a result like he did tonight, it's something that everyone can be proud of.
Not a word. Not a word. No, Carl Robinson, obviously, look, delighted. It's funny how it's turned around for Oxford because, look, we talk a lot about the Championship League 1, League 2, and Oxford haven't had a particularly good time of it this season. They started the season pretty poorly. They got this last week or two has actually been very, very good for them. We're starting to see that they have obviously got some ability within that squad, and I think they'll be reasonably strong now as they get themselves together. That being said, they should not be beating West Ham 4-0, and I don't care if it's a second-string team. You've just mentioned some of the players there. For me, Jack Wilshere, it worries me where his career's gone. I know he's had his injury problems, but for all the ability that he's got, this is the kind of game where I suppose you need to be quite dynamic. You need to show that you've got that ability to get around the pitch, and he just doesn't seem to have that anymore.
Yeah, I feel very sorry for him. Like, I feel really sorry for him. This is a guy that, like, when he's fit and firing, which just seemed like quite a while ago now, he does get people off the seats, doesn't he? And he just, look, I mean, I don't know him personally. Only interaction I've ever had with Jack Wilshere was I was at Brent Cross Shopping Centre, and I was in a Wagamama's there with my partner, and Jack Wilshere walked in, just unassuming with his missus, and sat down, had a meal. Kids were coming up left, right and centre to get pictures with him. He entertained absolutely every single one of them. This was while he was eating, and a lot of people, a lot of celebs don't like any of that, do they? He had pictures with everyone, signed anything anyone wanted, shook hands with all the waiting staff after and walked off. And I thought, well, just off that alone, you do seem like quite a nice guy. I feel sorry for him because he's so injury plagued, but it's not his fault. At the end of the day, he's been offered a contract by West Ham, which is probably quite lucrative, and he's taken it. But I just think it's time for him to quit.
Well, that's the question, I guess. Was it? I mean, look, hindsight's an easy thing, but at the time, West Ham signing him, and from what we believe, it is extortionate wages, and of course, the promise that he showed in his younger years. Look, was it a poor decision from West Ham? And again, this is easy to say in hindsight, maybe, but looking back, is it a kind of almost like a classic West Ham signing to an extent where they think they might be able to get him back to where he once was, but maybe that was never going to be a possibility?
Yeah, and it just feels a little bit like the game's moved on around Wilshere quite a bit now. I mean, the Premier League in itself has kicked on in the last few years, and Jack Wilshere spent most of that few years not playing, has he?
That for me is, and you've hit the nail on the head there for me, which is where I think Jack Wilshere, even where he is now 10 years ago, is a fantastic player in the Premier League, but I just think now it's all about pace and power. Yeah. That's what you look at every team. Man City being a great example, the speed at which they play and the athleticism of their players, they're so dynamic. And I just think that the likes of that intelligent, and he is so intelligent, lovely range of passing, lovely touch, etc., etc. Now, look, that's obviously still got a place in the game, but you just wonder now at the very top level when you've got runners going past you and you haven't got the physical capacity to keep up with them, it must be so frustrating.
Well, on the turn as well. I mean, you're playing against Manchester City, they turn you around in no time, don't they? You don't know which way's up and which way's down. And, I mean, the fact is, every time he turns around, one of his ankles shatters. Yeah. So, I mean, he's just not at the race. I feel sorry for him, but he isn't at the races. At the moment, Chelsea, though, 7-1.
Yeah, no, we'll touch on that just to finish up on Wilshere, and I think that's it. And this is the unfortunate truth is that not everybody's got the capacity to go on and be a footballer. I mean, you can talk all day about maximising your potential, training harder than anyone, but the truth is, look, people talk about nature, nurture. A lot of it is nature. A lot of it is how you're born. What body are you born into? Have you got the capacity? Because someone like Jack Wilshere has worked incredibly hard at his game to get to where he's got to, but unfortunately, I don't think, and again, easy in hindsight, he ever had the physique to be consistent at the top level.
The only thing I would say to him, and take a little bit of comfort in this, is that Santi Cazorla was out for so long. There was talk at one point that he might lose his foot. Doctors told him he'd be happy if he can ever walk again. He scored against Barcelona recently.
There you go.
For Villarreal. So there is hope. And he's made a Spain cap as well since his comeback. He has, on his ankle, a bit of his... So he had to have skin grafts, and he had tattoos on his arm. And so the skin graft came from his arm. And now on his foot, he's just got a bit of a tattoo that was on his arm.
Right.
The guy's been pieced back together. He's like the Frankenstein of world football. But hey, there is still hope, Jack.
Yeah, and a quick word on Chelsea. You touched on it there. 7-1 victors. The fact that we're not actually talking about Chelsea all that much today is a huge compliment to them, I'd say.
I think so. I think this is the result that you would expect. It is the first time since they beat Villa 8-0 in 2012 that they've scored 7 or more in a game. It was positive signs. Ross Barkley, this is what you want. This is what I'm talking about now, about just a professional performance. What would Frank Lampard have wanted last night? Put the game to bed as early as possible, get players coming back from injury to score goals and play well, and get your kind of backup striker scoring. Well, Ross Barkley's got up to 4 minutes. Yeah, then you've got Batshuayi at 7, so that's like box ticks. He's then gone on and scored another one. And Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's been out with injury, scores as well. It's a perfect performance.
Well, it is. And again, they made lots of changes. One of the things I love is that you look at the Chelsea bench and the likes of Jorginho, Tammy Abraham, Mason Mount, Tomori. You've got quality players now that have, because of the fact that they've done what they've done early season, the likes of Tomori now, the likes of Mount, the likes of Abraham, all of a sudden we are seeing them as regular first-team players. They've still got them on the bench. They did make a lot of changes, but it was what you would expect. A team in the Premier League that has a strong second string and can go and take on a League Two team and dispatch them in the way that they did. Well, look, we're going to be talking more Carabao Cup, of course. We're going to be talking to Adam Bradford shortly, anti-gambling campaigner. The time is 16 minutes past 8.
I gave Kim Jong-un the upper hand, but only a tiny one.
This is Love Sport.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Ugh, finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
My mum and dad say that I don't need lots of sugar. I'm sweet enough already. So we used the Change for Life food scanner app to find out how much sugar is in our food and drink. It's surprising how much we found. So I put my detective hat on to find the healthier choices. Woohoo! Found one, Mum! You can be food smart too. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app today.
This is Lionel, another very happy person who saved themselves money at a spokesmansaid.com.
Hi, I'm Lionel from Peacehaven. I took note of what the spokesman said and I saved £484 per year on my energy, and I recommend everybody does the same.
A spokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings. Compare, switch and save with a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do, the smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
This is Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast, Love Sport Radio. The time is 18 minutes past 8. Myself, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you until 10 a.m. Of course, we're talking a lot about the Carabao Cup today. Manchester United are through, but certainly weren't convincing against Rochdale last night, winning only on penalties. Much simpler for Chelsea. And Liverpool got a good win as well, MK Dons. We're going to be touching more on the rugby shortly as well. Of course, England taking on the USA in the Rugby World Cup. However, we're going to talk now to Adam Bradford, anti-gambling campaigner. The news has come out that AFC Wimbledon manager Wally Downes has been suspended by the League One club after he was charged by the FA over bets placed on games. Morning, Adam.
Morning.
Morning. Yeah, keen to get your thoughts on this. So I've read the statement that the club has put out, and of course Wally Downes has been suspended. It was 8 bets that he placed between the 30th of November 2013 and the 12th of July 2019. What do you make of this story?
Well, it's interesting. It seems to be a recurring theme now, especially in football. It's not the first time we've seen somebody involved with the sport suspended or lose their position because of what's thought to be kind of insider betting. It's kind of the equivalent. It's the sporting equivalent of insider trading, or at least that's how the authorities look on it. Actually, what I think this case and all of the cases prior to it highlight is just how addictive and alluring gambling is to people, and how it can be quite destructive.
Yeah, I just don't understand why in this day and age people keep doing it. You know, we all know the rules, don't we? And is it? And we can't speak specifically about exactly what's going on with Wally Downes in terms of his particular issues or otherwise. But I mean, do you think that we are seeing a lot of players suspended for gambling, and the kind of attitude is that they've just been a bit thick, whereas actually they have a problem, they have an addiction?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's difficult to say, but we've seen people like Wayne Rooney who have had quite high-profile addictions to gambling, and other people in the sport as well. And across the country, there's hundreds of thousands of people who have a problem with it, and actually a growing number of young people who are getting into trouble with gambling. So we need to look at that seriously, and I think football clubs do need to make sure that their relationship with gambling is healthy as well. If we go back a few months, over summer, Huddersfield Town ran into trouble because of their stunt with Paddy Power. That relationship with a betting firm landed them in hot water. And we've seen other players and other managers have issues as well. Gambling is something which is quite addictive, and it's very heavily advertised now, especially around live sport. So for anybody who's involved in it, if they kind of susceptible to that and potentially get addicted to it or just can't restrain themselves, it can have bad consequences.
Yeah, well, I guess one of the big questions is, look, it's all good and well that there's a blanket ban, but are the EFL and FA doing enough to tackle the addiction at source, especially given now, I've read somewhere, is it 50% or so of teams, maybe in the top divisions in Europe, do have a gambling sponsor or, so there or thereabouts. So is there enough to be done to tackle the addiction at source?
No, I don't think there is. I think that the FA and the EFL recognise it, and I know we've heard them take a stand about gambling before, and I know that they do take part in some awareness programs to try and educate their players and clubs about this. But at the end of the day, if you've got a toxic environment where gambling is so heavily advertised, it's so intertwined with the sport in such a financial way now, it's very difficult for clubs to uncouple themselves from gambling companies. I remember somebody showed me 2 sets of football games a few months ago, one from about 20 years ago on the TV and one from now. Now, every single advert around the side of the game is betting. Every single advert almost that you get in the ad breaks is gambling. And I know the operators have said they're voluntarily stopping doing that and the adverts during the game. But 20 years ago, we weren't in this position and people weren't getting as addicted to gambling. So I think everybody's got to take heart in trying to make sure that gambling is not overexposed to people. So I think we need to see a reduction of advertising in the sport. I think we need more education within it to make sure people don't end up in trouble like this.
Can I just say, sorry, I don't understand. I don't understand why we need any advertising for it at all. If I walk over the road to the co-op and let's just say hypothetically I wanted to buy a packet of cigarettes, I'm not allowed to see those cigarettes. They're behind a curtain, and then even when they open the curtain, the packaging is non-branded. We've got rules about advertising alcohol and things like this. This is what annoys me, which is that you might as well be advertising crack cocaine to children, because that is essentially what this is. This is gambling is such a ruinous addiction. And when you're looking at football matches, who watches those football matches a lot of the time? It's kids. And so it's no wonder, is it, that we end up in a situation where gambling addiction among young people is on the rise. Like I said, I'll say it again, you might as well be advertising crack cocaine to kids. This is what I see. Why do we need advertising for gambling? We know where the betting stores are. You know how to get the apps on your phone. Why does anyone need to be told about it?
I mean, yeah, you're right. And we've been calling this out for years. It's scandalous. And all the companies do is, they say that they're not going to be advertising whistle to whistle now. So that's 5 minutes before the game starts through to 5 minutes after it finishes. They're still on the billboards. They're still on the programs. They're still on the players' shirts. And they're still investing heavily in social media advertising. So, we're in this situation where I think the industry itself needs to be very careful about what it does to avoid further strict regulation, which I hope there is some strict regulation, because that is the only way we're going to get on top of the epidemic. But, companies that gambling interacts with, like football clubs and associations, they've got to take part in the debate as well, because if they're platforming it in front of their young fans and in front of people, including players, who can very easily get addicted to it, and we know very many have, they've got to take some responsibility for that as well.
This is an interesting point. Because I know there's a lot of rules and restrictions in terms of gambling companies advertising on TV before the watershed. So, for some reason, though, there are certain exceptions when it comes to sport.
Yeah, it's patchy, and this is that kind of murky area of self-regulation where the industry is kind of trying to do the right thing and trying to say, look, we can be responsible, we're trying to do this, we're trying to keep people safe. But we're not really going to be keeping people safe unless we keep gambling out of things like football in a bigger way than we are now.
Great stuff. Adam, really appreciate you coming on.
All right, thanks for having me.
Adam Bradford, the anti-gambling campaigner. Something I do want to speak to you about on this, actually, Patrick, is that... Right, so it's 8 bets that he's made within a 6-year period.
This is Wally Downs.
Wally Downs. So, touching on it, Wally Downs has been suspended by League One Wimbledon, AFC Wimbledon. Now, AFC Wimbledon currently are down the bottom of the league. They're in the relegation zone. They've had a pretty poor start to the season. Now, of course, we don't know what these bets were. Now, of course, they may be really bad. It might be the case that he's bet against Wimbledon. We don't know. So at the moment, we have to be careful what we say, of course, because it might be really bad. Or it might just be that he's done a couple of accumulators or something that's not deemed as bad. Is there the worry that this could be a bit of a loophole for an AFC Wimbledon to look at it and think, actually, do you know what? We're not overly happy where we are at the moment. We're going to change manager. He is on another 18 months worth of a contract, which is going to cost us X amount of money. We know that this is a sackable offence. We know that actually by us knowing this information, we could just move him on and not have to pay a penny.
Exactly that. So Downs' side, 22nd in the third tier without a win from their 10 league matches so far. How convenient this is now.
Bearing in mind that Bolton have a 12-point deduction and currently on -10, and Bury aren't in the league. So effectively, they are bottom of the league. You know, and it's for League One teams that aren't Bolton or Bury this season. Then of course it's going to be hard to get relegated because there's only 2 spots. Realistically, Bolton should go down, you'd think, and Bury aren't even there. So they are bottom of the league.
Because the laws are so black and white. If he's gambled, and if this is proven, the FA. He's been charged by the FA for misconduct, so we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. But if it is proven, then they've just got a ready-made excuse to get rid of him here. And to be honest with you, I would assume, I don't know, I've not looked at his contract, but I would assume it's probably tantamount to breaking FA rules and I don't know, probably gross misconduct as well. I would have thought it's got to be up there, hasn't it? In which case, any payoff that you would imagine that he might have got would be out the window. So they've saved themselves a lot of money.
It's an interesting
I
topic.
hope he won the bets. I hope he won the bets.
Indeed. Kieran Wellington, for the first time today, he's got his headset on. He's ready. Kieran?
Yes, indeed. And I have looked in the Times this morning and found an interesting piece from Alison Rudd on Spurs. The joy has gone from Pochettino and jaded Spurs. And there's a really interesting graphic on 3 reasons why Tottenham are toiling this season. Basically, it's in the attacking phase. I think they're really struggling. We've noticed that with the exception of Crystal Palace, where they went 4-0 up in the first half, they've really struggled. Villa, first game of the season, they had to bring Eriksen on to break Villa down. And then without Eriksen, they just look kind of similar to United, really. There's no creative outlet there.
Lost. Total lack of hope.
Yes, exactly, Patrick.
It's all gone.
So let's go through some of the stats. They've been unable to make their dominance count. Despite ranking highly this season in terms of shots, they've had 88, which is 5th in the league. They have created very few big chances, opportunities which a player should reasonably be expected to score. Now, with all these expected goal stats and stuff, this can be ranked now. So they've only created 7 big chances, which is tied 13th in the league. Now, when you have an attacking midfield, they have such a wealth of forward players. You know, Son, Kane, Lucas Moura, Lamela, Eriksen, Ali. They should be doing far better than that, surely.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. I think, to be so low in terms of expected goals, that's really, really poor.
I've got a feeling Jack Grealish is going to go there in January. They need to unlock this key, don't they? They need a bit of an attacking force in that midfield and a creative force. He's been linked with them before. Eriksen's checked out. I reckon that's what's going to happen.
I think that is the issue. Is that the more last season it was fine because you still had an extra year on the contract for Eriksen, so you could see the problems coming, but at the same time they were reasonably solid. They weren't bringing anyone in, so people knew their positions. I wonder how big that Champions League final has been for both Liverpool and Spurs. Because, look, Liverpool have gone into this season absolutely flying and are very much focused on the league. Tottenham didn't finish the season well, had the heartbreak of the Champions League. You wonder whether there's a bit of a hangover. There is unrest within the squad now.
I appreciate that point, and I do accept that point. But they have been poor all 2019. Like, they've won on the road 4 times in all competitions in 2019. 2 of those were in the Champions League, and only 2 in the league. And
I suppose, imagine they'd have beaten Liverpool and the excitement going into the summer, major trophy, coming into the season. I just think, look, you're right.
But I think their cup run papered over the cracks.
True, but then this is it. How much of a difference is there from the team we were looking at the start of last season? I mean, they were there or thereabouts. They were within touching distance of City at one point. You're thinking, do you know what? They've got a chance here. And they went and shot themselves in the foot and fell away quite badly in the end. So it's still the same squad. It's not like they've lost a load of players. Look, they've lost Kieran Trippier and 1 or 2 others, but actually it's still the same nucleus. And they've added Ndombele as well.
Yeah, they have actually, and that seems to be a really good signing if he can stay fit, which, he's had his injury problems so far. But what I worry about, and it's kind of comparisons to United again, is they've relied on Kane so much, and it's almost like they've been scared to sign another world-class striker because they know Kane's just going to get picked. So it's almost been like they've had to sign a Llorente or a Soldado, for example, and that hasn't really worked out for them, and they've both been moved on. Now, if Kane's not scoring, okay, Son's stepped up in his absence, but, they're not creating enough chances. And, they haven't really got enough strikers to finish them off. And you look at Liverpool and City's front line, I mean, it pales into insignificance, really.
True. Go back to the point, though. We were saying this 8 months ago, whenever it was, when they were flying. 20 games in, they look brilliant. And this, for me, is where the mental side of the game, the psychological side, is so important, where you've got the same group of players, but a completely different set of results. Yeah, look, it is concerning time for Spurs, but at the same time, you also feel that maybe they're not that far away from being a top team once again.
Look, they're capable of going on a run, aren't they? It's just an accumulation of stuff, isn't it, really? Poch not looking happy and letting the players wind down their contracts and players being out of form and all this kind of stuff. It just feels like it's a bit stale and it needs a change-up.
What do you think? 0208 70 20 558. 28 minutes to 9.
Love Sport.
Listen to Love Sport Radio on your smartphone today. Simply download the free Love Sport app from the App Store or Google Play. Tap the play button and you'll be able to listen to your favourite station. Anytime, anywhere. Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
Are you fed up with rising energy bills? A spokesman said compares all the best tariffs on the market to help you find the very best energy deals for you. Visit aspokesmansaid.com and see just how much money you could save.
With aspokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Mr. Davis, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus. Car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
ASpokesmanSaid.com is a leading price comparison website that allows you to compare every energy tariff on the market in seconds. We have more deals than any other comparison website offering energy prices, and our impartial independent switching service is free of charge. Nearly 50% of UK households have switched bills, and there are hundreds to be saved. Visit ASpokesmanSaid.com, as recommended in The Guardian, The Times and The Sun. ASpokesmanSaid.com. If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast on Love Sport Radio. Me, Richley, Patrick, Christys, 26 minutes to 9. Of course, we've been talking a lot of football this morning. Manchester United, unconvincing last night, winning, but certainly only on penalties against Rochdale. It did feel like a loss, didn't it? They were very poor against Rochdale. Much better night for Chelsea. Liverpool made their way through as well. In fact, it was an interesting night. So many defeats for top teams. We'll be talking more about that. We want to move our attention to a little bit of rugby because, of course, England are in action shortly, actually, just under a couple of hours' time. They are taking on the USA, and I'm delighted to say that Russ Milsom of the Maul Over podcast is on the line. Morning, Russ.
Morning, gents. How you doing?
Morning. Yeah, good. We've been talking a bit about this morning, and I know that, of course, England are heavy favourites. But will this be a walkover, or will USA be able to pose a bit of a threat?
I don't know whether they'll be posing a bit of a threat, but it certainly won't be a walkover. I mean, you've only got to look at Uruguay yesterday against Fiji to know that teams get right up for World Cup games. So, the USA have got some very good players, some players that play in the Premiership and some names that some might recognise. So, England will have to be on their game.
Is it right that Eddie Jones has got Billy Vunipola in the side because he's so important? Is it worth risking him in terms of an injury sense now, do you think?
It's important that he gets game time, but I think it's also important to rotate the squad. When you look at the games to come, obviously against France and Argentina, we're going to need Billy Vunipola in those games. So for me personally, I think it would have been an ideal opportunity to drop someone like Mark Wilson in there. But again, Eddie Jones kind of knows what he's doing, and you'd hope that it's all part of a bigger plan.
Yeah, well, you mentioned he knows what he's doing. He's made 10 changes. Is that enough?
Oh, who knows? The guys he brought in are all part of the squad to make an impact in the tournament, and they've all got to get some game time. So, I think again they probably got the analysts looking at it, managing their minutes, and all the clever technology they got going on now. They'll make sure that they're all padded out equally.
And with the USA team, they've got 5 Premiership players. How good are those players?
Very good. I mean, AJ McGinty from Sale, who has been their sort of starting fly half on and off now for a good couple of years, is a very good player. Paul Lasicki is a centre who is a very powerful carrier, made an impact at Harlequins last season. There's Blaine Scully there, who used to play in the Premiership too. The problem they've got is the guys around them that don't have that sort of big game experience as well. So it's difficult for those sort of 5 or 6 players that do have decent experience to carry them through.
I want to get your thoughts on Ben Youngs. Here's what he had to say.
It's pretty humid, pretty slippy, so it'll be a good chance to test how quickly we've worked on that. Training's been pretty minimal this week, just a lot of walkthroughs, but that's an area we can certainly tidy up. The other one, I felt like we had Tonga in some really good position in terms of field position, but we let them off with poor discipline.
He obviously feels there's a lot of room for improvement. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, first game of the tournament, bonus point victory. World Cup matches it's about winning, and whilst performances are nice, I think whilst you're winning games with bonus points, that's got to be celebrated more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you made of the standard of refereeing so far at this World Cup? I mean, World Rugby themselves came out and were quite critical, weren't they?
Well, the standard of refereeing hasn't been great, and we've got to be honest about that. But I think the last thing that the referees themselves need is the governing body coming out and openly criticising them. And, World Rugby put the structure in place, and they set the benchmarks for the referees for the ability to make their decisions, and then, by the looks of things, don't back them when they actually make decisions for themselves. I mean, you've only got to look at Reece Hodge, and over the weekend, the referee and the TMO both looked at it. They both talked through a decision and made it clear what they thought with all the information available, and then have basically, for my mind, been thrown under the bus by World Rugby by citing him and banning him afterwards. And if you look at the incident, you could very much argue that it was a yellow card offence. You could argue it was a red card offence. But I think in high-speed action, if he carried on towards the touchline, what would have happened is Reece Hodge would have pushed him through and wrapped him and taken him into touch. The fact that he cut in at the last minute, these are decisions that are made in a split second, and these collisions do happen. I don't think there was any malicious intent, and therefore I don't believe it should have been a citing. But I think the social media aspect and the outcry that goes on whenever there's any sort of incident like this, there's the Samoa guys on Sunday against Russia too, that World Rugby have now decided that, based on this outcry of social media, I think, that they are going to publicly condemn the standard of refereeing, which I think is really poor.
But what I find a bit strange is that everyone always goes on about the car crash impact that rugby players have to put up with, and that is obviously the speed and the force with which they are hit. Now, you have here guys who are 16, 17, in some cases 21 stone, running at a rapid rate into each other. The whole point there with a car crash is you can't always get out of the way of it. Things change, things move, it swerves. And this is what I don't understand about some of these tackles. Now, you've got big lads here moving at pace who are jinking and jiving all over the place. Occasionally, by accident, you are going to put in a high tackle or you are going to put in a kind of no arms tackle or whatever, isn't it going to end up being quite impossible to have any form of serious contact in the game if we keep looking at these kind of minute details of it and banning people for, in the case of Reece Hodge, the Australian winger, for 3 games?
Absolutely, that's exactly what's going to happen, and it's the trial, almost the trial by social media. You know, every single tackle or every single incident is dissected to an inch of its life via GIFs and all sorts of other stuff on Twitter, and you know, it's very easy to take a still or a very short clip of something and take it completely out of any sort of context. So what I believe is, you know, the people that are calling for all these changes, you know, don't always fully understand the speed at which the game is played, and these accidental collisions will always happen. You know, the responsibility of the tackler to go low, there are more concussions for tacklers going low and getting a hard knee or a hard hip to the face and to the head, rather than the tackled player getting an arm or a bicep or whatever to the face that way. That's been proven. So I think, yeah, it frustrates as a fan, and primarily, you know, I'm a fan who hosts a podcast. So, you know, I like to see the game played hard and played fair. You know, and any sightings should be based on foul play and stuff that the referees and the officials on the day may have missed, not publicly sort of shaming them for having, you know, the bottle to make a decision themselves.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I want to touch on the game yesterday. Of course, Uruguay beating Fiji, stunning upset. Is it good to see the Minnows playing so well?
Yeah, it's just great. It keeps the tournament. I say keeps the tournament interesting. During the group stages, there are always a lot of games that are almost dead rubbers when you get the likes of New Zealand and England and stuff playing the smaller nations, or especially the very small nations like sort of Uruguay. What yesterday did is showed the passion and the vigour that appears in these much smaller nations like Uruguay. I mean, the interview with the captain afterwards was just incredible, and it showed exactly what it meant to them. Yeah. You know, for perspective, Fiji beat Uruguay in the autumn internationals last year. They played at Kingsholm, and they beat them 70-odd to 3.
Yeah.
So it just shows how far a team can come, and it shows what World Cup matches actually mean.
Yeah. No, just a quick word on George Ford, of course, captaining England this morning. Looking forward to seeing how he goes.
I'm a big fan of George Ford, and I think he's probably our best attacking option when he plays at 10. You know, Owen Farrell is a world-class player, and I think that combination when they play together at 10 and 12 is where we are at our best. So it's great to see George Ford there. It's great to see how he'll link up with Piers Francis. Piers Francis has had a lot of criticism for why he's actually even in the squad, and I personally think he's a very good utility option, which you need at any World Cup. So I don't think Piers Francis will let anybody down whatsoever.
Great stuff. Last but not least, can we get a prediction?
England 27, USA 12.
Okay, fantastic. Great stuff, Ross. Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
That's Russ Milsom there of the Maul Over podcast. Interesting prediction, you see. This is what I was saying. Not necessarily going to be as easy as people are saying. I can see it being reasonably tight.
Well, I don't know. I think it'll be. I think England will just do the business. I just got a good feeling about this England team, you know.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I think this World Cup's there for the taking, because New Zealand aren't quite the force that they once were. Still, obviously incredible. South Africa were going into this favourites, got done in by New Zealand.
Yeah.
I like England's position in this World Cup. I just think, you never know, we might yet still have an open-top bus parade at some point in the near future.
See, I can just see it from USA's point of view. This has got the makings of like a Mighty Ducks.
Okay.
You know, where they're massive underdogs.
Yeah.
And like Disney are waiting in the wings already to get the rights to this movie.
Yeah.
When they go on and lift that World Cup. USA.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is going to be a bit tricky for them as well, like I've said, because they'll all come out with the big helmets on.
Yeah.
All the padding.
Yeah.
The lycra. But I mean, after everything, just even like a little tiny little, like you've got the ball, you've run a yard, you've been brought down, then they get up, they throw it down, it's got America! Yeah! And then they invade Iraq.
Quarter tonight.
England is the wettest country around, but what do you expect if the Queen's going to reign for so long?
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Ugh, finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. This means that travelling to the EU will change. You'll need to check online if your passport is valid for travel to Europe. If you're planning on driving, you'll need to check if you have the right documents to drive. And make sure your travel insurance covers all your healthcare needs. To keep your trip on track, check what you need to do at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Think the energy price cap will save you money? Think again. You could be saving a lot more on cheaper energy tariffs. Price comparison site A Spokesman Said will show you just how much money you could be saving against your current tariff. Don't throw away your hard-earned money to the energy companies. Check out aspokesmansaid.com and you could switch to cheaper bills in minutes.
thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit wedooh.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes. This is Love Sport.
To only win 2 games in our first 7 is not the standards that we've set in obviously previous years leading up to this. Obviously 2 draws, City away and Arsenal away, ain't terrible results, but Arsenal away being 2-0 up all of a sudden feels like a terrible result.
That was Harry Kane there, of course. Not going so well for Spurs.
No, it's not going so well for Spurs, is it? Hard that to hear what Harry Kane had to say, but hopefully they could bounce back.
It was, I think it was standard. The audio wasn't quite up to scratch, I think.
I feel sorry for him.
Because?
Well, because he's an athlete. He obviously can't really breathe that well out of his nose.
No, which is, look, I think, would you take all the positives that Harry Kane's got for the fact that maybe he's a bit nasally?
Yeah, I suppose. He needs one of those Robbie Fowler nose strips.
There you go. They were massive for a period of time.
What
Do you
was
remember
all
them?
that about?
It was nonsense.
Yeah, what was it? Just something you stuck on your nose?
I bought them. We all bought them. You stuck it on your nose and it opened up your airways slightly to give you, which of course I needed more oxygen in order to play in goal. Kieran's rubbing his chest vigorously.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's trying
I think what he's trying to say
communicate.
is Vic. Do you remember when Patrick Vieira and the Arsenal lot always used to do it?
Yeah.
Remember, you'd see them in the tunnel, they'd have the shirt on, it looked like they just spat on themselves.
Yeah, it's very strange. I'm talking to you and I've got Kieran in the background rubbing his chest with real vigour.
Well, you just got back from Vegas, mate, so I would have thought that you're used to this kind of behaviour.
Anywho, we'll move on and talk about Spurs, shall we? Not about my Tyson Fury trip to Vegas. Spurs, look, they are struggling. Look, we're talking about Man United, of course, this morning. The fact that they struggled past Rochdale. Not a particularly good night. Solskjaer under more pressure. Of course, the night before, Spurs lost to Colchester, who are the league below Rochdale. So as much as we're going into detail about Man United, the pressure that Solskjaer's under, it was a worse night for Spurs. Spurs are out and they lost to Colchester.
Yeah, that's true. It has been a bit of a poor season for Spurs. It's an accumulation of different things, though, isn't it? Them allowing major players there, such as Jan Vertonghen, to wind their contracts down to the point where they can leave in the summer. Christian Eriksen wanted out, wasn't allowed to leave. You've got some players there that were essentially told that pretty much they were surplus to requirements, like Danny Rose, who now are playing, so they don't feel that wanted. Got a manager who's been making noises about leaving for quite a while, and yeah, it just seems as though maybe Spurs need a bit of a refresh.
Well, someone else who's been making noises about leaving, our producer Kieran Wellington, who is on the mic.
That is total nonsense. I enjoy working with you immensely, Richard.
Fantastic.
It's nice to
It's
have
good
you
to
back.
hear.
But someone who is not enjoying his work at the moment is Dele Alli, and his injury absences kind of almost pass Spurs by right now because his goal contributions have been so poor. compared to when he started at Spurs. So a tweet here from Miguel Delaney. Dele Alli's absence barely a tremor for Spurs now. He hasn't scored a goal since January. His scoring rate has dropped from 1 in 2 in 2016-17 to 1 in 4 to now 1 in 5. Very suddenly in danger of wasting his talent, according to Miguel. What do you think?
No, I think it's a good point. And do you know what? This actually brings us back, for those that have been listening to the entire show, which I'm sure everybody does from start to finish. We had the quote from Arsene Wenger, and he talked about motivation. It's not necessarily the short-term motivation. It's those that have got the long-term motivation. He called it like the stamina, the motivation stamina. And actually, this is the exact point for me, is Dele Alli, where for a period of time, he climbed that mountain so quickly, and he was, for a period of time, I believe, world-class or verging on world-class, and he's fallen off the cliff. Now, look, he can get himself back there, but he needs to press the reset button.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky for him now, though, because I think once you've edged off, and I just think that he had that period, as you said, where he was on top of the world, and it looked like he was going to be, starting in the England team from now until the day he retires, and we're going to be talking about Dele Alli playing for Real Madrid and all this kind of stuff. And then actually what happened was Jadon Sancho came along and Raheem Sterling became world class.
Is it though? This is it. So let me now ask you the question, okay? You've come through the ranks. You've got to the top end of the Premier League. You're scoring fantastic goals. You've just scored in the World Cup. You've got more money than you could ever possibly spend.
I do, yeah.
So what does that do to you as a person?
Well, me personally, I would obviously always get up. If anything, it would make me work harder because I've had a sniff of that and I would want to continue. But now I've stopped lying to you, Reg.
Yes.
I would be at the casino every night. I'd have filled my swimming pool full of Courvoisier. And I'd have a circular bed. One of those circular beds.
That actually rotates as well.
That actually rotates. Basically, I'd be hideous.
Yes.
Essentially, I'd be Andy Carroll.
Or Dele Alli.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the point for me, is that it's not necessarily about Jadon Sancho. It's not necessarily about Raheem Sterling. I think if he had the mentality of a Ronaldo, of a Messi, he would use those two to help inspire him further, which isn't happening.
Do you remember the video of him that emerged in a London hotel? Where he was in the foyer after a very, very boozy night with some England stars, saying, "Oh, what can you do for me? What can you do for me?" Basically, saying, we spent $4,000 in the bar here, and I want a better room. And they were like, "Well, we haven't got any better rooms." You booked in, and it's little things like you've never really seen Messi or Ronaldo do that.
In defence of Dele Alli, he has had 4 hamstring injuries in the last 12 months.
Yep. Which, okay, you're right, and of course that's going to play a part. Look, this is it, and this is where it's always difficult to know unless you know him very, very well. But it's then, of course, we build a perspective. We build a narrative over what he is, who he is. And when you hear little stories like that, that's, again, not necessarily going to help to this image that we're building of him.
No, I know a lot of people just are naturally predisposed to a certain type of injury, and the hamstring will be an absolute killer for footballers. Just look at Michael Owen, for example. But, and this is a genuine question to you, Rich, as a professional footballer, is... Can hamstring injuries potentially be linked to actually a kind of lack of fitness or a lack of physical attention to detail?
So there is a belief with a lot of physios that muscle strains shouldn't occur. And that's often down to training. It's down to the work that you'll do away from the field. Right. So Pilates, yoga. Do you remember there was a period of time Ryan Giggs could not, he kept getting hamstring. Now, they said at the time, a lot of that was linked to the car that he was driving. He was doing long journeys. It was pretty much sat flat on the floor because it was a sports car and it wasn't particularly good. And he had to change his car in order to feel that much better. He then got heavily into yoga and in the end played till he was, 40-odd? So
Because the reason I'm asking is Luke Shaw always looks overweight, always does his hamstring. He can't play more than 25 minutes without twitching his hamstring. And then you look at Dele Alli, I'm just wondering how much work is going on off the pitch.
Here's one for you. Alcohol increases inflammation. So if you're injured, naturally, by the way, I did this, 19 years old, broke my arm, knew I was out for 3 or 4 months. So I was going out a lot more because I hadn't really gone out before then. And all of a sudden, I knew I was out for 4 months. So what did I do? I was going out twice a week, just more so to keep my sanity. But without realising, I was prolonging my injury because each time you go out and you drink, for instance, even now, when I go out and have alcohol, I wake up in the morning, my knee's swollen.
Really?
Even now, because I had a meniscus taken out when I was younger, my knee's absolutely fine. I wake up after having a few drinks and my knee's swollen. Which, just to consider that, so then as a professional footballer... Now, by the way, I'm not saying that Dele Alli is out doing that, but the point is there's several different parts to this. The other part to it as well is that injuries can decrease your motivation because the more that you get injured, you keep having this recurring injury. At some point, and I had this, you just think, actually, can I be bothered? I feel like I'm trying so hard to get fit and I can't quite get myself to fitness. It might even be that.
Yeah, it could well be, but I think the problem goes beyond Dele Alli at Spurs. And there's an interesting statistic surrounding Spurs, because Pochettino, when he came in at Spurs, was kind of a tactical genius. He was viewed as someone who was really moving on the game. And now since Guardiola and Klopp has come in, he's kind of fallen down that order a little bit. And I think he's run out of motivation himself in many ways, and it's shown in the stats. So pressing of opponents is really important to Pochettino's style of play. Now, when he took over in 2014-15, they would make 4 high turnovers per game, as in high up the field, which was tied 4th in the league. 4.5 the next season, 4 again 16-17, 4.8, which is his best, and that was 3rd in the league 2 seasons ago. But this season has been 3.7 high turnovers per game. And when you think the pressing game has come into football so much more in those last 5 seasons, that means they are ranking 12th in the league. I think they've really kind of lost a lot of the essence of what made Pochettino Spurs so good.
That's an interesting point. He's got lots of stats this morning, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Almost like he's sat in front of a computer, isn't it?
It is. It's no, he's just got all this in his mind. It's
just going on.
It's impressive. He just counts. He watches games and counts, and he's worked it out that it's 3.7. No, look, the point you make is a good one. And if anything, I would argue now, especially watching Arsenal the other day against Watford, for those that saw it, like you're seeing teams try and play out with absolutely no idea as to what they're doing. It's embarrassing a lot of the time. So if anything, the number of turnovers in the attacking third is going to be that much more. And the fact that Tottenham are down slightly is a little bit concerning, and that will be one of the many reasons that Tottenham are struggling a little bit at the moment. Let us know your thoughts. 0208 70 20 558. It's 3 minutes to 9.
This is Love Sport.
Mr. Davis, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus, car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
Hello, my name's Paula. I'm from the Shropshire area and I'm a business development manager. I use a spokesman said for my car insurance, where I've saved over £500, and also on travel insurance as well. So in total, me and my family have saved about £600. I would definitely use it again, and I would definitely recommend it.
With a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
How are you? How are you really? Modern life can be busy, and sometimes it's easier to look after others before looking after yourself. But there's only one you. And making small changes to your lifestyle now could improve your chances of staying healthier longer. So take the first step to a healthier you with our free How Are You quiz. See how you score and get personalised tips and support. From how to eat a little healthier to turning a 10-minute walk into exercise. Just search One You.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Love Sport Breakfast, Love Sport Radio. Myself, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys. The time is 1 minute to 9. We're here with you for another hour or so. We've got a big hour. We're going to be talking more about England's Rugby World Cup game that they've got coming up against the USA. Talking to Ian Hunter, ex-Northampton and England rugby fullback. We'll no doubt be talking a little bit more Carabao Cup. An interesting night last night. Several Premier League teams knocked out. Manchester United did make their way through, but certainly made hard work of it, beating Rochdale only on penalties. As always, you can get in touch 0208 70 20 558 on the WhatsApp, at Love Sport Radio on the socials, or tune in on YouTube. Just look up Love Sport Breakfast and you will find us. It's 9 o'clock.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 9, a Conservative MP insists the Prime Minister was right to hit back at his opponents during a Commons Brexit debate last night. Nigel Evans says Boris Johnson was referred to as a cheat and corrupt. The PM's being criticised for his own language and for saying the best way to honour the murdered MP Joe Cox is to get Brexit done. His suggestion followed this plea from Tracy Brabin, who succeeded Mrs Cox.
Can I ask him, in all honesty, as a human being, please, will he, going forward, moderate his language so that we will all feel secure when we're going about our jobs?
Donald Trump has tried to shake off allegations threatening his presidency as a hoax. The US leader denies claims that he lent on Ukraine's leader to smear a rival, but phone call transcripts show Mr Trump repeatedly ask him to investigate Joe Biden. Most of the Thomas Cook flight crews who were abroad when the company collapsed are now back home. The civil aviation authorities also returned nearly a third of more than 150,000 customers to the UK. The parent firm of British Airways has issued a profit warning after strikes at the airline and weaker bookings. International Airlines Group says the industrial action by pilots earlier this month cost it an estimated £121 million. The BALPA unions threatening more strikes. Football: Oxford thrash West Ham 4-0 to pull off the shock of the night in the third round of the League Cup. The League One side will now play Sunderland in the last 16. Manager Carl Robinson says it's the best result of his career.
Putting smiles on people's faces and developing young players, and when they can bring all them things together and you can have a result like you did tonight, it's something that everyone can be proud of.
Manchester United will go to Chelsea in the League Cup fourth round after they scraped past Rochdale on penalties last night. Celtic and Rangers are into the Scottish League Cup semi-finals and will play Hibs and Hearts respectively. That's the latest. I'm Tim Jones.
This is Love Sport.
Confucius once said, life is simple, but we insist on making it complicated. Well, at SEAT, we believe choosing your next car should be simple too. So we're offering the Ibiza FR for £199 a month, including 17-inch alloy wheels, full LED headlights, and your choice of colour at no extra cost. Why make life more complicated? Because them, us, SEAT.
£597 initial rental price based on FR 1 litre MPI, 48-month contract hire, 18s plus subject to status, not in conjunction with any other offers. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. SEAT Financial Services.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport Breakfast with Richard Lee and Patrick Christys.
Good morning, Love Sport Breakfast, Love Sport Radio. Myself, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you for another hour or so. Let's just touch on the big stories this morning. It was a fascinating night in the Carabao Cup. Manchester United did find their way through, but certainly struggled against Rochdale, drawing the game 1-1, could only win on penalties. A dreadful night for West Ham, losing to Oxford 4-0. Also, Bournemouth losing away at Burton 2-0. Much better night for Liverpool and Chelsea, who are both safely through. And similarly, a bad night for Sheffield United, losing to Sunderland. Villa beating Brighton, and Wolves are through, although did have a scare at home to Reading. Of course, England are playing USA in the Rugby World Cup today. That gets going in just over 2 hours' time, and plenty more going on too. I am, of course, joined by Patrick Christys. Patrick, you well?
Yes. Morning, Rich. Morning. I've just about got over Manchester United's quote-unquote win last night, which was pretty shocking. I just feel like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer now, whenever he closes his eyes, he just hears a clock ticking until the day that he gets his P45. Although, just a note on this, one thing that I think has not been reported enough, actually, is the fact that will Ole Gunnar Solskjaer really care? Because he's got a very, very poor squad here. He's coming in and done a good job. He'll always have those fantastic memories of his first 10, 12 games in charge and beating PSG. And he's still going to be a Manchester United legend. You know, United fan is ever going to hate Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And he's going to be millions of pounds better off if he gets the sack. Millions. He can retreat to the fjords. He can just go herring fishing in the ice. He can take his Volvo back from whence it came and all that.
You got any more Norwegian stereotypes?
Just apart from the phrase hurdy-gurdy.
Okay, that's a nice one. Nice one to round that up. Yeah. The point is, though, and in fact, I want to talk about Chelsea more so. They will face each other, Chelsea, Man United, and I guess, and Solskjaer did say this in his post-match interviews, they are through. Like, now, whether they won last night, 7-0 or 1 on penalties, they are through.
Yeah.
Is that an... Because look, they could go and beat Chelsea in the next round and they can make the quarterfinals. And then all of a sudden...
Yeah, I think so. United obviously spanked Chelsea first game of the season.
Yep.
And what a difference a few weeks makes. Because I think Frank Lampard's team now are going to be out for revenge against a United team that is like a wounded animal in the Serengeti, just waiting to get picked off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we shall see. Of course, in fact, we're just seeing images on the screen last night. I mean, how exciting it was for the Rochdale, the youngsters. And of course, Matheson, 16 years old. He's going to sixth form college today.
He's got a psychology test today at school.
Amazing.
I mean, how do you even teach that kid? What do you tell him? I think, so we're just going to deal with the psychology of dealing with high-pressure, intense environments. Anyone got any experience of this? Anyone?
Anyone?
No? No? Fine, okay.
The problem is he'll have the exam. He won't have slept a wink last night. He'd have been so excited. Now, I know you didn't sleep a wink last night, but obviously different reasons.
What?
What?
I sleep well. What are you on about?
Anywho, he wouldn't have slept a wink last night. He's got to go into this exam today. How do you focus on an exam after a night like that?
Well, I mean, his psychology teacher will be able to tell him. I said this before, though. I really hope that when he goes into... Because he could conceivably... You could play against... So I would have played against, quite possibly, whatever school it is he goes to in the Greater Manchester Cup, from where I grew up. We used to play in that cup.
Yeah.
You imagine just rocking up and just seeing him on the pitch. Let's just go home, lads.
Yeah.
Let's just go home. I hope as well he's got this really over-the-top PE teacher that still thinks he's got a thing or two to learn from him. You know, just run with the ball. Just run with it. Run with it. Carry it a bit more. What's your positioning? Like, mate, I've just scored at Old Trafford, you numpty.
Get it in the corners.
Yeah.
Get it in the corners. Get it long. Solskjaer, by the way, let's hear from Solskjaer. He admits he was relieved last night.
As you normally are, when it gets tight, you're happy. When you win, you're through. That's our tradition, to do it the hard way, and it's a great stage for some of the youngsters to prove themselves. And there was one or two that really did.
It's tradition.
It started to make me feel a bit sick.
It's tradition. I forgot. Do you know what? I take back this entire show.
It's the Manchester United way.
It's the way. They don't do it. So Bayern Munich.
Oh.
Look, do you know what? Actually, the more I think about it, last night
yeah.
reminds me of the European Cup final against Bayern Munich. They did it the hard way.
Exactly. I mean, and that's what the fans want to see, isn't it? Now, look, his rhetoric now, what was nice at the start, which seemed like... It did seem like a Norwegian Sir Alex Ferguson had just entered the room a little bit at the start with some of the way that he was talking about, and it was what United fans wanted to hear, the return to the glory days, the culture. But now he is just clutching at straws, isn't he? He really is, and it's getting a bit too much. We spoke earlier on to a gentleman who was at the game last night, and he said that Solskjaer came out of his dugout at one point and just kind of stood on the touchline, didn't really say anything. He looked like a broken man, was the quote, and you think, yeah, he probably is.
He did. Do you know, as the penalty shootout was going on, the look in his face was it told a story. Like he knew that regardless of what happened in that penalty shootout, he was going to get some stick today. Look, on a more positive note, and one of our London clubs, Chelsea, they dispatched Grimsby, obviously 7-1. I mean, look, a very positive performance. It was always going to be a game similar to United game where the fact, again, we haven't spoke about them this much this morning is a huge compliment to them because they did exactly what you would expect a team to do. Man City last season when they played Burton in the semi-final of the League Cup and won 9-0, and at the time... You know, it's kind of what you would expect from a team of that calibre to win that comfortably.
Yeah, that's what you want. They ticked all the boxes last night, and I think that's what the main issue is at Manchester United, to be honest with you. But also bad night for West Ham and Hammers fans. I know you were very, very chipper after you beat Manchester United. Well, United won last night, just about, and you guys lost. Not that I'm particularly bitter about it or anything like that. Lost 4-0 away at Oxford in a team that did include the likes of Jack Wilshere. Disappointing game for them, although what I will say is West Ham fans, and look, obviously get in touch if you think I'm wrong, 0208 70 25 58. I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world that you're out there. Focus on getting top four, and I think there is a chance. Leicester and West Ham I'm looking at and thinking, you might sneak in there.
They've been very good in the league. Another team we haven't spoke about too much, but Liverpool did get a win at MK Dons. It actually wasn't the most convincing Liverpool performance I've ever seen. I did watch this one, and it was a goalkeeper mistake, opened the scoring on 41 minutes. James Milner shot from distance and mishandled it, and unfortunately for him, it went in the corner in the second half. And in fact, they had a young goalkeeper in goal, Kelleher, young Irish goalkeeper, played for Liverpool, came in for Adrian for the night, and was very, very good, made several key saves. It certainly wasn't as convincing as maybe you'd expect.
No, but it was a relatively youthful side that ran out last night. It had a first full start for Ryan Brewster, of course, 19 years old. He looks like a real talent, and I think there are a lot of positives to take there from Liverpool. And again, it was job done. It didn't really ever look in doubt, and it's that nil is the most important thing. It's a clean sheet, isn't it? And United are struggling to do it at the moment. Liverpool, this is what champions do, where you field a slightly weakened team, or a very weakened team, I suppose, which included, by the way, Harvey Elliott, who became the youngest player to start a competitive match for Liverpool. He's 16 years old, 174 days. He actually did miss a bit of a sitter.
Well, he hit the bar twice.
He hit the bar twice, but he looked lively. He looked good, and he looks like a good prospect, and that's probably going to prove to be a good buy. And that's the point. Look, the MK Dons are absolutely no mugs whatsoever, and the fact is Liverpool didn't really look too stressed out last night, and they managed to blood some youth and keep a clean sheet. So not a bad result at all. Just a quick word while we're on Liverpool on Mo Salah. So he had a bit of a feud with Egypt. Because the national team, because they put his face on the front of the plane that they were flying to the World Cup on, and he wasn't happy about that. It's more of a team thing. Also, crucially, apparently they hadn't agreed to use his image rights, so he was in a situation where he might have been about to be embroiled in quite a long-standing legal battle with his own national team's equivalent of their FA. But now his feud with the Egyptian FA has taken a new twist, because he came fourth in the best men's player category at the FIFA Awards.
Yep.
Behind Messi, Ronaldo and Virgil van Dijk. Now, the Egyptian FA claim that acting coach, and sorry about this, but I think it's Shawki Garib, and skipper Ahmed El Mohammadi did back Salah, apparently, in this thing, but neither of their votes were included in the voting breakdown. So Salah has not taken the news well, removing all mention of playing for Egypt from his social media profiles, because the Egyptian FA have questioned this. He obviously didn't want them to. So it's a little bit of a weird situation, really, where Egypt's arguably only, I suppose, world-class player looks like he might not play for Egypt again.
Yeah, which is very concerning for them, although, in fairness, it sounds like he's got reasonable grounds.
Yeah, you don't want that, do you?
No.
It's like you don't want them going into bat for you. It's a little bit like, when your mum rings up someone who's been mean to you, just have a go at them.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want that.
It's not a great look, is it, really? No. I mean, I often see your faces on banners here, there and everywhere. I'm assuming you've given the rights for...
What are these banners?
Huh?
Where?
Well, when you're driving into London, where there's you...
Is it?
Huh?
Oh, gosh, well, I need to get in touch with my agent.
Probably need to discuss that, don't we? We're going to be talking a bit of rugby next. Of course, England take on the USA in just over 2 hours' time. We're going to be talking about that next.
Love sport.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Stop paying too much for your energy bills. Brian saved money on his at a spokesmansaid.com. Can you?
I'm Brian from Swaddling Coat, South Derbyshire, and I saved about £400 on my energy bill with a Spokesman Said. The iSpokesman Said website was very easy to use, and the money I saved I put towards a holiday.
Compare home energy quotes from the UK's biggest suppliers in just a matter of minutes with a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
If you see somebody showing any of the signs of a stroke, you don't have to think about it, you just dial 999. Use the FAST test. F. Face. Has their face fallen on one side? Can they smile? A. Arms. Can they raise both arms and keep them there? S. Speech. Is their speech slurred? T. Time. Time to call 999 if you see any one of these signs. Act fast, make the call, dial 999.
I'd never be a vegetarian. I think that is a huge mistake. Mistake. So clever, so funny.
Love sport.
Love Sport Breakfast, Love Sport Radio. Time is 9:15. Of course, England have another game in the Rugby World Cup today. They're playing USA in just over 2 hours' time. Delighted to say we've got Ian Hunter, ex-Northampton and England rugby fullback on the line. Morning, Ian.
Morning.
Morning. Of course, England heavy favourites for this one. Can you see USA posing any kind of a threat?
Well, yes. I think the short answer to that is probably not. That doesn't mean that they're not going to pose any issues with England. They're well coached by Gary Gold. He's an experienced coach. He's been around, spent a lot of time actually in the Premiership. I think with London Irish, Bath, and Worcester, to name some. So there won't be any mugs. So it's going to be a stern test for them. But a really good opportunity for a number of players who might be on the fringes for England to make a case for the latter games in the pools.
Yeah, and what do you make of Eddie Jones's team selection, specifically regarding to Vunipola, who is such a vital cog in this England machine, and someone that, if he picks up an injury, is going to leave a massive, massive hole behind? And is it worth risking him against USA?
Well, Eddie knows the players. He's going to be, watching them day in, day out, sort of training. So it's a quick turnaround, 4 days. I think that his selection is actually quite good. Again, it sort of whilst the USA will test them, I think Eddie Jones is testing his players as well. I think the performance against Tonga probably, whilst it was a win and a bonus point on top of it, probably they didn't boss the game. And I think there's some good opportunities for players on there. But it's got to be fingers crossed for some of them. Certainly wouldn't want to see Billy Vunipola get injured on this. He's absolutely crucial for England's task in the World Cup.
How does it work then in terms of training in between the games? Because it's such an intense period, and the amount of physical recovery that's got to be involved surely is so big that there's almost not time for it. Will they just be essentially almost not really training between games, just resting? How will it work, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I can only go on what it was like when I was playing, and that seems like many moons ago now. So I'm sure the recoveries are better. I mean, they've got some great teams out there. It's an old friend of mine, a guy called Phil Pask, heads up sort of the physio sort of side of it. So I think they'll be working around the clock to keep these guys fit. But it's a bit of a time to sort of probably a day of rest for some of them, some light training into that. But I think the good thing about a 4-day turnaround is it doesn't really give you a huge amount of time to dwell on the last game. So as I said, I think a number of these guys will be itching to get in there, and for some of them it is a fresh start in the World Cup and their opportunity to make a mark.
Yeah. Your thoughts on the refereeing so far in this World Cup and the decision to ban Reece Hodge for 3 matches?
Yeah, do you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you see him coming across, and I think some of the refereeing decisions on it, all you want really as a player is a bit of consistency on there, and I think some of those are really sort of showing to players that they've just got to be careful. As I said, you're a suspension away from missing the rest of the World Cup, so some of those decisions, as I said, are could have gone either way with them. I think one of the areas that I think definitely needs looking at is the offside. I think a number of games that I've watched, I think there's been a number of players sort of encroaching on that, and some of those sort of things. You saw that against actually France and Argentina with Picamoles taking an interception when Argentina really had a good opportunity to score. I mean, those are the areas that you really want to be policed. So, but it's not easy out there.
No. A quick word on Elliot Daly. He's kept his place at full-back. What have you made of him?
I thought he looked sharp actually in the game against Tonga. I mean, England have got an abundance of talent really in that back three. They could play any number of combinations on there. I suppose I always have a preference who I'd like to play. To be honest, I'd really like to see Anthony Watson getting that run in there. I think he's an outstanding player. At 15, I know England and Eddie's been utilising him on the wing, but I still think his best position's back on there. If I was going to pick my back three, based on the best, I think I'd probably start with Daly on one wing, Watson at full back, and if Noel was injury free, then I'd probably pick him. But if not, Cokanasiga I think would be my choice certainly at 14.
Which, of course, is Cokanasiga and McConaughey in the back, which is quite an exciting three.
I think it is, and again, I think Gary Gold, as I said, as a coach, has put a lot of structure in within the USA. The kicking game's pretty much on point as well, and it will have to be today. I think if they kick loosely, then I think England have got a back three to exploit them, and I think a lot of the top sides have that. You saw that with South Africa and New Zealand. You've got Faf de Klerk, who's normally excellent as a box kicking, as is Pollard. You're a couple of metres off, and all of a sudden you're not contesting that ball, and it takes a couple of quick passes. If you've got a back three who've got power and pace, then they can really get amongst you.
Yeah. What do you think Eddie Jones will be looking to improve from the Tonga game?
I think, to be honest, control. As I said, it's a win. It's a bonus point win as well, which is good for him. But I just think the manner that went about it, if you look at the Wales game, certainly in the first half, they really controlled that game. And I think that's what England will want to see onto this. I think USA are ranked 15th. It should be a game that should easily win. But what you want to do is you want to see a side really controlling it and taking the ball up, getting in behind them, really pushing them, dictating the pace of the game itself. And then when the team starts tiring, that's when you can really cut loose.
Great stuff. And last but not least, can we get a prediction?
I think England will win. I think it'll be a pretty similar score actually to the Tonga game. I think they'll want to keep USA. They want to keep a clean sheet. So I'm going to put England by at least 35 to 40 points.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Thank you, Ian. Ian Hunter there, ex-Northampton and England rugby fullback, giving his thoughts on the game, which takes place in just under 2 hours' time, England taking on the USA. I'm here with Patrick Christys. We haven't actually done all that much on the front pages today, and we like to touch on the front pages, don't we?
Yes, exactly. Well, look, obviously, we are a sports-based station, but there's a kind of sport that's ongoing at the moment, which is baiting our politicians. So it kicked off yesterday in Parliament, which was, of course, recalled after it was deemed that Boris Johnson unlawfully prorogued the thing. So it was a bizarre day, because what Boris Johnson has come back and said is, look, this is a dead Parliament. It is just face down in the water, this Parliament, because we're not doing anything. Right, we've got a few weeks until it is suspended anyway, and you have the Queen's speech, and you start the new session, you lay out your new agenda and all this. Now, what I found particularly frustrating was, if you are going to go to the highest court in the land and make it so that it has to reconvene Parliament in order for you to try and sort out Brexit. Now, that was the point of that. That was why they went to court. They were claiming that they needed the extra 4.5 days, or however long it was, in order to crack Brexit. And what did they spend yesterday doing? They spent yesterday shouting at each other. They spent yesterday calling each other names and saying how much they hated one another. I don't know if they quite understand the level of disappointment in this country. I woke up this morning, and for the first time in my life, I was ashamed to be British, because I think your country and a representation of your country to the world is what is ongoing in your Parliament. That is the envoys. They are the envoys that you elect to give the impression of you to the world. And yesterday, it was an absolute circus. It was a circus led by a tiny little jester called John Bercow, who is the Speaker of the House of Commons, who used to have this rule where you're not allowed to clap in the House of Commons, but that went out the window. As long as you were slagging off Boris, that was all okay. And it's not just, by the way, the opposition. I'm obviously quite miffed at Boris Johnson as well, who's turned us into a little bit of a laughingstock during his tenure. But my point is this. At the moment, we can't have a general election because Boris wants one and the opposition are blocking it. Now, if we don't have a general election, because we're not going to sort out Brexit, right? We're not going to sort out Brexit like this. There's too many disagreements. This is ongoing. It is like just a spot that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're waiting for someone to lance it. And you need now a general election where Boris Johnson can go, OK, my policy is no deal, and here are my other policies. And the Lib Dems go, our policy is remaining in the European Union, and a few other policies as well. Labour outline their manifesto as well. And people now vote. And what happens is a load of the old fogies that are currently sat there collecting £80,000 a year at the taxpayers' expense would be booted out, and you get a load of new people, and you get a new Parliament with a new vigour to it. Whatever way that is split, whether it's Corbyn, whether it's Boris, whether it's the Lib Dems, you get a new Parliament with a fresh start to it, and we get things done. what annoys me the most is that the fact that they battled through to the courts, all the way to the Supreme Court, in order to reconvene Parliament to sort out Brexit, and then didn't really talk about Brexit because they were too busy calling each other names. And I just thought you were an absolute ocean-going disgrace, a disgrace to this country, a disgrace to everyone who's living in it, you're a disgrace to the taxpayers who pay your wages. That is a room full of people that if the building fell down and had to be rebuilt again in a completely new place, nobody would care anymore.
Well, here's one thing. This is linked, I promise you. So, a great stat. Rochdale's record signing, Paul Connor, cost £150,000. Manchester United pay more than that every week to Inter Milan to help fund Alexis Sanchez. So, who's more incompetent, Ed Woodward or John Becker?
Oh, okay. Interesting one.
See the link?
Yeah, just about. I think they both are. I think they both are. But I think, look, in fact, this is the thing that now there's a poll here. It's on the front of the Mail saying that most voters want an election. And this has to be the case because anyone who supports Labour wants a Labour government. Anyone who supports the Lib Dems wants a Lib Dem government, an SNP, etc., etc. And anyone who's a Tory would want a larger majority so that they can get things done, push the Conservative agenda. So pretty much everyone in the country right now should want an election. Now, here's two interesting facts. We had a referendum and 17.4 million people voted to leave the European Union. As yet, that has been ignored. We have people now, right up and down the country, a vast majority of people who want a general election, and we are being blocked from having one. So that those kind of old fogies that like to go into the bars after they've finished pontificating in Parliament and drink themselves silly, surrounded by all their mates, at the taxpayers' expense, get to just carry on doing that. Now, democracy in this country, as it stands, is dead.
Well said, Mr. Patrick Christys there. Let us know your thoughts as always, 0208 70 20 558. We've got a very special guest on the line after this. We're going to be speaking to the Grimsby goalkeeper.
John
Burko, who has been listening in. John,
my good friend John.
What have you
are
got to say, John?
Oh, hello, John. Sorry about all those things I said about your height.
No, we're going to be speaking to the Grimsby Town goalkeeper, of course, played against Chelsea last night. The time is 27 minutes past 9.
This is Love Sport.
Mr. Davies, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davies.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus, car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at a message, or firing off a quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
This is Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast, me, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys, time of 29 minutes past 9. We're going to be talking to Grimsby goalkeeper James McKeown very shortly. Of course, they lost heavily last night. Nothing he could have done, but obviously an interesting experience nonetheless. We'll be talking to him, touching on the Carabao Cup for those of you that are just waking up and you've missed some of the results from yesterday and the big stories from yesterday. Well, the biggest story, although they went through, is arguably Manchester United. They did beat Rochdale, but it was not a convincing display whatsoever. They won on penalties at home to Rochdale. More pressure on Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. A dreadful night for West Ham, losing to Oxford 4-0. Bournemouth losing to Burton 2-0. Liverpool did win. They beat MK Dons 2-0. Chelsea beat Grimsby 7-1, as mentioned. Sheffield United lost to League One Sunderland 1-0. Brighton lost to Villa, a very young Brighton team. And Wolves went through against Reading, although they had to take it to penalties. Which even that one, just to touch, I haven't really mentioned the Wolves game, but again, scraped through. We're not seeing necessarily all that. They're not all that convincing at the moment, Wolves.
No, and it's a shame, actually, because I thought that the top four was there for the taking for them. I had at the start of the season, them and Leicester bracketed into it. Now, West Ham, for me, have kind of usurped Wolves this season so far.
Yeah.
It is a shame because they've got real talent there, and they are used to kind of nabbing points off the top six, aren't they? But just hasn't clicked yet. I think there's no need to be too overdramatic about the whole thing. I think Wolves are a good outfit. They've clung on to a lot of their players. Yeah, there is an issue though, which is that their owner has one of the largest stakes in Thomas Cook.
Yeah.
So Wolves are now, well, technically, I suppose, £1 billion worse off in a way. Or at least the owners are anyway, depending on how they divide those finances up. But I'm not sure how that looks. Not forward.
No, indeed. A quick word on Villa as well. Villa won 3-1 away at Brighton. It was a very, very young Brighton team. I think the average age was around 21. But a good win for Aston Villa.
Yeah, they've impressed me so far this season. I like the fact that they're going to have to dig the heels in a bit, aren't they, this year? And they seem to have the attitude and the character to do that. Jack Grealish as well. I think I can just see him going to Spurs in January. I can just see Grealish going. I can see Eriksen shifting off, or even if he stays, I think they need an Eriksen-esque figure. And Grealish has done well this year for me. I would like to see how he does at a top Premier League team, because I think it's not easy, obviously, but it's slightly easier to be a big fish in a smaller pond. No disrespect to Aston Villa fans, but you know he's their main man, isn't he? He's a captain. He's a local lad. He's got a Peaky Blinders haircut to match and everything. I want to see how he does with the big boys.
I suppose the thing now, the fact that they are Premier League would be, they were talking, 18 months ago or so that he was likely to go there, whether that would be realistic or not now. I'm quite excited. You know why?
Why?
I'm going to get to speak to another member of the Goalkeepers Union. You know what I get like. You know what I get like. And actually, it's somebody who was involved in a very, very big game last night, 3-time Player of the Year. James McKeown, Grimsby goalkeeper, is on the line. Morning, James.
Morning, how you doing?
Morning, yeah, good, thanks. Hope you're well too. In fact, we just watched the highlights of the goals, and I have to say, we didn't have a chance on any of the goals conceded. How was it as an experience playing at Chelsea?
Yeah, like obviously my family and that were there, my kids, and like it was great for them. But you have that personal pride, don't you? Especially as a goalie, I don't care who you play, you don't want to lose 7-1. So it's still a bit raw, to be honest, this morning. I think, like, when I finish playing, maybe I'll look back and think, yeah, it was a good experience. But yeah, it's just not nice to. And even like I know you watch it back, don't you, as a goalie, and you think, oh, give me that one again, or could I have done that? So. Yeah, just a bit raw this morning, to be honest.
No, I can imagine. I mean, obviously, speaking from experience, I've been there as well. And I watched the game at the weekend, of course, Ben Foster, Watford, and, you're 5 down within 17 minutes. The truth is, though, and I'll always stick by this, effectively, you're playing a different game. You can have the game of your life and lose 4 or 5-0. Similarly, you can play really poorly and win 4 or 5-0. It's a strange existence being a goalkeeper sometimes.
Yeah, it's like you say, the Ben Foster one on Saturday, like, I watch him and it's like, could he have done much more? Not on that day.
No.
Might have days where it hits him and he stays out. But it's just obviously you go there and your chances are 1% maybe of doing something. But then you come back in the dressing room and you see Rochdale have took Man United to penalties and it's like, oh, why is that not us type thing? So, But I mean, listen, they're a class well above us, and they were good on the night. And you need them to underperform, I think, firstly. And they didn't. They were very good. And obviously the game plan, you think stay in it for 15, 20 minutes, and if you can get a foothold in the game, and then you're 2 down in 6 minutes.
Yeah. Which is the killer. It's good to get a word on Chelsea because it was a reasonably young lineup, but then I think it's fair to say now the way in which they've progressed this season, and they're bringing a lot of their younger players into the first team, and they do look very, very good. And in fact, the fact they had the likes of Tammy Abrahams on the bench and Mason Mount, who of course made a good name for themselves. What did you make of the lineup that they had?
Oh, that's the thing. I think as a lower league player going there, you want to play their better players. It probably decreases your chances, but you want to test yourselves. With all due respect, you don't want to play against an under-23 team. But then, obviously, Reece James played, Hudson-Odoi played, and they were very, very good. They were probably two of their better players in a way on the night. So, I mean, from their point of view, like I say, they were professional. They were ruthless. They were very good. Like in terms of the Chelsea that I've known, they're a different breed, if you like. Obviously, giving the younger players a chance. And I'd imagine in a couple of years' time they'll be a force at the top of the table, to be honest.
Yeah, look, you kind of obviously saw the whites of Callum Hudson-Odoi's eyes last night a couple of times. And is all the fuss about him, is all the hype about him true, do you think? Or what was he like to play against? What kind of little things stand out for you about him?
Well, we went man for man in the first half, which we did at Palace last year. But it didn't work as well, obviously, in the first half last night because maybe individually they had a bit more class. Hudson-Odoi probably didn't start the game great. Our right back Luke Hendry did a really good job on him, but he sort of grew into the game. And then by the end of the game, it felt like every time he got the ball, he was gonna get a shot off. So I know he's obviously coming back from injury as well. So it's listen, like I said, I think they're very good. The future for them is looking bright. Obviously, it's that fine balance, isn't it, of making sure that the future's good, but the here and now's doing okay as well.
I guess slight frustration as well last night. That I'm right in thinking 3 of the goals were in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult. You know yourself, don't you? As a professional, you almost want to keep going. You want to keep going, but at 4-1, to take your medicine a little bit and keep it at 4-1 and say, okay, it's not our night, and we'll stick at that score, because you start to chase the game, and then they were just picking us off, to be honest, in the end. And it's difficult then, like, the game gets away from you, the game gets stretched. And like I say, they were ruthless, which is full credit to them, because they could have easily just took the foot off the gas and passed it around the back, and they kept coming and they wanted to score goals. And even at the end, there was like a couple of chances where you could see the frustration and they didn't score. So that's probably why they're at the top level, the professionalism.
Yeah, I just want to touch on Grimsby this season. I mean, you're well positioned, 10 games in, 15 points just off the playoffs, so certainly a positive start. You're up against top of the league, Exeter, at the weekend, so it'll be a tough game. And in fact, my producer is giving it the big thumbs down. He's a big Plymouth fan. So, but that'll be a tough test for you guys, obviously away at Exeter. And on the back of this, do you think you'll bounce back?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it's a long journey for us. We've not stayed down, so we're obviously travel down tomorrow at 9 o'clock and get there whatever time we'll get there. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like you say, that's our bread and butter. It's nice to have them nights. It's not nice at the minute, but I think probably going to the top of the league is actually a good thing for us, to be honest, because you know you're going straight into another big game. With all due respect, I think sometimes if you go into a home game, maybe against a team that the fans expect you to beat, it can be difficult sometimes. That expectation's there, you've got to get going. It might suit us going away to top of the league. I'll tell you at 4:45 on Saturday. But listen, we've started okay, better than last year since I've been here. It's my 9th season. It's been our best start. So. We're doing okay, but we want to progress, obviously, and obviously be at the top end of the table.
We've been doing a lot on the show today of comparing United to Chelsea. Similar-ish setup, obviously, former players as managers, and a big push on the youth front this year. And it seems to be going better for Chelsea so far, that's for sure. But I'm quite keen to get your take on it, because you're still playing, you're still a player. And one of the cases we were trying to make was, as a player, it's obviously quite important to have a lot of respect for your manager, but also maybe a little bit of fear sometimes as well. And out of those two, Lampard and Solskjaer, which one do you think, as a player, which one do you think you might kind of respect a little bit more or fear a little bit more as a manager and as a tactician?
Obviously, judging off what I seen last night, the Chelsea fans couldn't be any more supportive towards Lampard. They were unbelievable. It was a sellout, which obviously was unbelievable from their point of view to have that, because with all due respect, they're playing Grimsby. It's a nothing game for them, if you like, and they were singing his name and whatever. And he carries an aura about him, to be fair. I mean, respect-wise, I think you'd respect both because of what they've achieved.
Yeah.
I think that's a natural thing, but I don't know. I'm looking from the outside in it's not for me to judge, but I would look from the outside and think Chelsea seem to be pulling all in the same direction. I know they've got Czech there as technical advisor or whatever it's called, and they seem to have a purpose where they're going. Whereas I think United still are a little bit. I don't know if it's all going in the same direction. And like you say, well, from my experience last night especially, they've got some real talented young players coming through there. And I think Chelsea probably at the minute are a little bit ahead of United, but obviously time will tell.
And lastly, just obviously you've racked up a lot of games for Grimsby, well over 300 now, and you've got. Am I right in thinking you've got a testimonial coming up?
Yeah, I'd be due it next year, as long as I haven't made too many mistakes and they still like me by then. But yeah. So I'd be due one next year. So I never thought I'd be here like 10 years when I signed. I just signed at 21, and you think to yourself, can I get in the team and can I play some games really? And then I don't know, you sort of stick around, and it's obviously it's hard, and it's a very fickle game, especially probably being a goalkeeper. You're a couple of mistakes away from being the worst thing in the world, but that's probably why we do it as well a little bit.
Yeah, you do need a slightly odd mentality. We have this conversation on here all the time. They think I'm mental. So
Rich is weird. Rich is really weird.
Absolute weird.
That's a compliment.
It is in the goalkeeping world. I love it. I feed off it.
Yeah, exactly.
Great stuff. James, really appreciate you coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. That's James McKeown there, Grimsby Town goalkeeper. Of course, Grimsby went down to Chelsea last night. Genuinely, though, obviously we've seen the goals several times, in my opinion, and I am a bit of a goalkeeping geek. There was nothing he could have done on the goals.
No, you'd have to hold your hands up to that. And actually, I think fair play to him for coming out as well this morning, because it's easy, isn't it? You know, if you do pick the ball out your net 7 times, it's probably an easy thing to do to just hide. We heard he's obviously got a kid with him there. It would have been easy for him to just pull the school run trick or whatever, although it sounded a little bit young for that, didn't it? But you know, it's fair play to him. And I think it was what was really interesting was just hearing him there talk about the aura that the Frank Lampard seems to have around the Chelsea fans, and clearly as well the way he speaks about the likes of Callum Hudson-Odoi. I mean, it was just quite a telling thing that he said, look, I think they're going to be challenging for the title.
It's tough when you play a game like that. No, it's tough when you play a game like that and you are 2 down so early on. Well, look, Watford had it at the weekend with City, and you go a couple down. I mean, God, in that case, they were obviously 5 down within 17, 18 minutes. And genuinely, as a footballer at that point, you know the game's gone. You know you've lost. Ideally, in a perfect world, you almost want to say, yeah, we're done. We'll give you the win. We'll walk off. But you obviously can't do that. Now, look, obviously the fact that the scoreline looks worse than it is, the fact they conceded a few goals late on, but I suppose that's the sign of the top teams. They've got the ability to do that, score early, get the 2-3 goal lead. City do it. How many times do we see City do that? Where they get that lead, and you know when they're 1-up, you're probably not coming back because they're defensively so good. But when they get that second goal, they almost then take it back to third gear, and they just cruise through games. And I think that as well, from a stamina point of view, like having that kind of control of a game, being able to dictate a game in that kind of way, I think for longevity as well. You know, you see the teams that are having to scramble to get 2-1 victories, 1-0 victories, where City and Liverpool seem to be coasting through games. That's why I think we see them later in the season still looking so fresh.
Yeah, look, absolutely. It must always be a tricky thing as a footballer when you are playing a team that is like Chelsea, and you are, with no disrespect, Grimsby, and you do find yourselves like 4-0 down. You just want to kind of just put 10 men just on the goal line and just set up camp, don't you? But you can't do that. And credit to them for not doing that. I think this is kind of what these cup competitions are all about, though, because the keeper that we spoke to has lost 7-1 last night, but hey, he's played against some future stars, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Tammy Abraham, Callum Hudson-Odoi and that lot are going to be lifting a Premier League trophy in the next couple of years, and he's played against them. And you heard his kid there, and he's got something to tell his kid about, hasn't he, really?
Yeah. No, look, we had it in this way, even in the Premier League. With Watford, we played away at Manchester United. I'll never forget, it just felt like attack v defence for 90 minutes. I felt like every goal kick, I was just kicking up to whoever was in defence, and it was that we then set up 2 banks of 4. Right, can we keep them out? And it was just pure resistance. And to keep it to 4 on that night, we came off relieved. And it is often like that, And I think, again, this is where we have to give Rochdale, as much as we spoke about Man United, the inefficiency of Man United, we need to give Rochdale massive credit for what they did last night.
You know what I think as well is something that he said there, where he came back into the dressing room and they saw that Rochdale had held Manchester United, and then obviously it went to penalties, and United won 5-3 on penalties. But he was saying, why couldn't we have done that? I wonder how many teams now, like your Grimsbys, like your Rochdales, or frankly any team, in the lower leagues now, if that name, Manchester United, comes out of the hat and it's you're getting potentially a very big away day. You're getting to go to Old Trafford. You know, you're doing all that, and then also you might win. You actually might win now.
I think there's a very different feeling if you're drawing Man United or Man City away.
Oh, gosh.
And what I mean by that is that excitement in both cases, because you're going to be playing in a fantastic arena, you know, against a top team. But with the Man City one, you know you'll get dismantled. I don't think you would draw Man City and think, oh, we've got a chance of an upset here. Whereas now...
I think I'd rather play City purely because I just want to see it. I just want to know what that feels like. It's a little bit...
Be dismantled.
Yeah, just to be systematically taken apart from start to finish by a team of world class. I'd want to be able to be so close you can just smell the dismantling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to come off feeling like I've just got the last chopper out of Nam. Because there's no other team that you're going to play against in world football now where you can just witness it and go, wow. That is how they do it.
Well, if you want, I can do it to you like on a character point of view. You know, just...
Good luck, mate.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that in the next section. 9:45.
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
Please state your reason for this call.
I would like to end my home insurance policy.
Please state your reason for this call.
End my policy.
Please enter your 12-digit passcode. Policy ended.
Finally.
To confirm end of policy, please enter credit card details and pay £50.
With Aviva Plus home insurance, you can pay monthly at no extra cost and with no cancellation charges. New Aviva Plus. Insurance the way it should be.
Excludes Northern Ireland.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Hi, my name's Kurt Edwards. I work in advertising and live in Surrey. Last year, the family content insurance was £745. A friend of mine had recommended a spokesmansaid.com. When it came for this year's renewal, I managed to get it for £403. So for those 10 minutes on that website, I saved over £340. Told my family, my friends, you'd be absolutely mad not to give it a go.
Spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
One thing I've learned is never judge a book by its movie. I'm joking, I never read.
This is Love Sport.
Love Sport Breakfast, Love Sport Radio. Me, Richard Lee, Patrick Christys here with you for another 10 minutes or so. And then, of course, Martin Bell is up next with his fantastic show. So do stay tuned in for that. But for our final flourish, we have got the one and only Kieran Wellington has joined us. Kieran?
Yes, I have indeed. It's nice to be in the studio with you two for the final section. And I want to talk a little bit about one of my cricketing heroes, Marcus Trescothick.
Big day today.
Yeah, it is. 27 years as a professional. What a career he had. He's had a roller coaster of a journey, played at the highest level for England, like impeccably, but only for 6 years because, well, at test level anyway, because of the mental health problems he had and the issues he had with travelling away with England to foreign countries. And, you know, he has said cricket is special, but the mental health side has been pivotal. It's given me an audience. And in some ways, his stats are remarkable for a guy who only played 6 years for England. Most runs opening for England. Of course, Alistair Cook is top. Jeff Boycott second. Graham Gooch third. Mike Atherton fourth. Andrew Strauss fifth. Len Hutton, who's a legend, back in the old days, sixth. But Marcus Trescothick, who played 6 years, is seventh.
Wow.
So it just shows how good a player he would have been, probably right up there with Alistair Cook if he could have utilised his prime years for England. But in terms of his one-day record as well, You know, he averaged nearly 40 at a strike rate of 85, which back in those days was he had an aggression to him that you didn't often see from an England opener. First class games, 391, which is incredible. 26,000 runs, 6600s, 127 50s. A true legend of the game. Unfortunately, his form hasn't been good enough to be picked for a title-chasing Somerset this season, but at the age of, I think it's 42, who can blame him, really? And a great way. It would have been so perfect for Somerset to have won the championship this season and give him that kind of final curtain call, but not to be, it looks like.
With cricketers as they get older, and I know in most sports, football for instance has been a good example, where outfield players tend to get 30 odd and then they get that little bit slower and get more injuries and so on and so forth, and that's the reason more often than not that they fall out. The fact that he's gone on to the age he is shows that you have got potentially more longevity in cricket. Is it reactions that slow down? Is that the main thing?
Yeah, Trescothick was an excellent slip fielder, and that sort of side of your game is obviously kind of hampered when you get into your 40s. But your batting, because there's so much about rhythm and tempo in your batting, you never really lose that. If you're, at the quality that Trescothick is, you never really lose that. And of course, 90-mile-an-hour bowling you might not be able to face quite as well as you did before, but in the county championship you don't get a lot of that. So no, it is a little bit about, naturally you're going to wane a little bit, but his longevity is testament to the way he trains. I think there was a great video on Twitter of Trescothick in the nets over the winter, and it was snowing at the county ground, and Trescothick was out in the nets. So he obviously loves.
The groundsman wasn't happy.
No, the groundsman no.
Come on, mate.
But it's testament to his kind of love of the game, and it's great to see that he's battled through his mental health issues as well, which I think we all can appreciate, and everyone now, we're so aware of it. He was obviously the first one, really. We've had Jonathan Trott since, but he was the first one to kind of talk about this openly, and that is part of his legacy.
Oh, look, definitely. I mean, the guy was look at what's going on at the top of England's order now, and you just remember how quiet it was when Trezor was opening the batting. You just walk out. Look, he didn't always score 50 or 100 every single week, but you just knew he had it in his locker. And it was the way that he went. He was the first one. We talk about Steve Smith, the way that he leaves the ball. So, he plays a shot at deliberately. Trescothick was probably a couple of years into his England career, and everyone was talking about how he plays and misses all the time. He doesn't play and miss all the time at all. He deliberately covers his stumps and leave it. It was only after a couple of years when we go, oh no, that was just the way he leaves the ball. And it's a brilliant way of doing it. He was the first one to do that. He was great fielding in the slip cordon at Gully as well. And he just had a stature and a presence about him. He did. Kind of opening bat. The way he hit his cover drives. And you knew that even if you were a Bretley or whatever, you had that batsman in an era where one-day cricket was still a bit sedentary and plodded along and everything. He was a test match opening batsman who would take a game to any team that came up against, slap him over the head for 4, straight back down the ground, see him in a bit.
And of course he was part of that opening stand in the 2005 Ashes, and we took on one of the best Australian teams ever to have lived, and Strauss alongside him, 2 of the best opening batsmen in my lifetime to play for England. And like you say, the way he was bullish in his approach, he would just take the game to the Aussies without fear, without kind of any sense of retribution, and it was just great to see.
Isn't it? It's worthwhile pointing out, because someone like a Jonathan Trott as well, for example, noted for clearly being an exceptional cricketer, also had his mental struggles.
Sure. And I just wanted to touch on what he says about his mental health in this interview with Mike Atherton, who of course amazingly opened the batting with Trescothick, and Trescothick has gone on to play against Mike Atherton's son now, so that just shows how long Trescothick's been around. But Trescothick has said, it's given me, the mental health, something different to focus on and a wider audience to speak to, and I've enjoyed that interaction. I still take medication in the morning and evening, and an antidepressant in the morning that is constant, and an anti-anxiety tablet in the evening, whose dose I can alter depending on how I'm feeling. I can still feel the anxiety coming on occasionally. It's a physical feeling, and then it affects my sleep patterns and eating patterns, but I've been coping well. I'm starting to think about travelling again. There were elements of touring that were so much fun, and I went for a couple of weeks on pre-season tour this year. It was the first time he'd done that for Somerset since his troubles in 2006, and enjoyed it. I'm not ready to be away for 3 months yet, but I'm getting there. I've enjoyed chatting to players about it. Sometimes they come directly, other times through the PCA. I've interacted with players from other sports too. I'm not a medical expert, obviously, but I have experience and I can talk about coping mechanisms and what has worked for me. If that helps people, then great. And he says, you know, this could be something that kind of gets remembered long after his cricketing achievements, which I can't see myself because he was such a great cricketer. But it's so important to have someone at the forefront of sport like this in the game right now.
Great stuff. Well done, you two. That was quite a tribute. I don't think there's much I can add to that.
You're not crying, so we haven't done our job right yet.
Oh, is that what you're aiming for?
Well, yeah.
We want the waterworks. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, go on. I'll give it one more last go.
Go on, one more.
Go on, one last hurrah. What does Just Gothic really mean to you?
Well, he was literally one of my first cricketing heroes. You know, the way he set about and he just did it in such an English way, right?
Humble.
Yeah, he was. He's a humble guy. He's obviously from down my way, which helps. And just the way he has battled through adversity. It's all about what sport can give you. The love of sport has helped him battle these problems that could have really, you know, succumbed him to really dark depths. And he's come through, played for Somerset, captain Somerset. Leader. What a legend.
Do you know what? I'm emotional. This is as emotional as I get. They call me a robot, but you can see.
There's a little glint in his
there
eye,
a
little tear in his eye.
Tearing up a little bit.
Oh,
anyway,
come
moving
on.
What else going on?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that.
What a feeling.
What a feeling. Yeah.
I don't have feelings.
Oh, my God.
Why would I choose to have feelings? Go on, so what's going on?
Well, we obviously had the England squad announced for the Test matches and T20 squads on Monday to tour New Zealand. And Saqib Mahmood, the Lancashire pace bowler, was picked. And it's a troubling story and one that probably reflects society right now, all that's going on with the right-wing leaders in the USA and Brazil, for example, and also over here with Brexit. There's just a lot of division right now and a lot of hatred going around. Saqib Mahmood, the 22-year-old fast bowler, has said that he was called a terrorist on social media after being refused a visa for India in January. So this was for an England Lions tour. And he was denied a visa because of his Pakistani heritage. And, of course, there's a lot of troubles between India and Pakistan, and that was the reason why, presumably. But, on social media, he got a lot of stick. All of a sudden, I was being called a terrorist, and I had not done anything wrong. People thought I was plotting something. I was getting called not a lot of nice things, hence I tried to forget about it all. But it's great to see that another Asian player is stepping into the breach that Moeen Ali has so wonderfully filled in the last decade or so. It's a really important thing, I think, for young British Asians growing up to see people in sport. We've got Chowdhury now for Leicester City, who's flying that particular flag. Neil Taylor as well, who has Indian heritage, I believe. So it's great to see, because British Asian is such a big part of our population now, and that's what, you know, as a gay man, I want to see more gay people in sport, and I'm sure it's the same for British Asians who want to see more British Asians in sport. So it's great to see someone like Saqib Mahmood making the England squad.
Great stuff. And on that note, I think we'll round things up. What do you reckon, Patrick?
Well, we legally have to now because it's almost the news. And then Martin Bella get very annoyed if we ate into his show. It's going to be another great show from Martin.
Yeah, I don't want to eat into his show again. We know what happened last time. But do stay tuned. It is a fantastic show. Myself, Patrick and Kieran will be back tomorrow, 3 minutes to 10.
Love sport.
Mr. Davis, to start your car insurance policy, you'll have to pay upfront £850 for the year in one single payment. How does that sound?
£850?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one go?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Today?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
In one single payment?
Yes, Mr. Davis.
What?
With new Aviva Plus, we won't ask you to pay everything up front. Everyone pays monthly at no extra cost. New Aviva Plus, car insurance the way it should be. Excludes Northern Ireland.
Can you save money on your car insurance? Chris did, with a little help from a spokesmansaid.com. Getting real people, real savings.
I'm Chris from Leicestershire, a truck driver. I went on a spokesman said, which was very straightforward and easy to use for an old git like myself, and saved over £300 on my car insurance.
Find quotes from over 100 leading insurance providers at a spokesmansaid.com. Fighting for you, saving you money.
Whoa! Look how much saturated fat is in these chocolate biscuits. It's surprising how much is in our food and drinks. For us kids, eating too much saturated fat can lead to